On a bright morning, with the sun warming the stone and the sweet scent of sour salt berries wafting through the air, the witch, now in a new body, revels in her freedom. She muses on her new life, one where she is free to use as much magic as she pleases and wonders with delight what she should do today. This world is home to great kingdoms, many of which are protected by powerful holy beasts. The Silver Kingdom of Jilvara sits at the center of the continent, surrounded by 5 vassal states: the Peninsula Kingdom Reze, the Water Kingdom Wadel, the Thunder Kingdom Manhwa, the Grass Kingdom Wint, and the Snow Kingdom Sneeve. To gain autonomy, these states had to swear to defend Jilvara by using a specific, powerful method. That method was the summoning of a holy beast. The duty fell to the crown princess, who would perform the ritual to call forth a guardian to protect the empire. In addition to this duty, the vassal states took turns sending a princess to marry into the Jilvara royal family. Upon learning that this year's chosen bride was from the Snow Kingdom, a young man reacted with outrage, shouting, "What the hell?" That young man was the crown prince of Jilvara himself, a 12-year-old Yule Draugjenfloa. Holding the official notice, he expressed his fury, questioning how they could send him a woman who couldn't use magic. His anger boiling over, he seized the young princess's arm, declaring that someone like her could never be queen. This rejection sealed her fate. At just 10 years old, Princess Marietta von Schnobel of the Snow Kingdom was ordered to be locked away in the Mage's Tower at once. The mages of the tower were commanded to teach her whatever they could to prepare her for the ritual. Prince Yule watched with a cold, unwavering gaze as she was taken. From her engagement day onward, Princess Marietta was to be locked up in the lonely tower. Within the dark, creepy corridors of the tower, 2 maids walk, their voices echoing off the stone. One questions the cruelty of His Highness for imprisoning the princess simply for being unable to use magic. The other agrees, remarking that it's too harsh for a young girl and that she must be terribly depressed. As they reach a heavy door, one of them calls out, announcing that they have arrived to deliver the princess's meal. To their surprise, Princess Marietta greets them with a radiant smile, thanking them profusely for preparing her food. The maids stare, taken aback by her cheerfulness. Marietta then formally introduces herself as Marietta von Schnobel, stating that she will be in their care from now on, which elicits a squeal of delight from the maids. She beams, adding that it is a pleasure to make their acquaintance. Her infectious charm completely wins them over. The scene shifts to a lesson with an elderly tutor. The woman announces they are finished and asks if Marietta has any questions. With a bright smile, the princess replies that she does not. The tutor instructs her to review the materials on her own and then departs. A flashback begins. Marietta recalls that ever since coming to the Mage's Tower, she has devoted herself to studying and practicing magic every single day. She remembers her circumstances clearly. While she was happy to come to Jilvara to fulfill her duty as the first princess of Snu, her inability to use magic had earned her the displeasure of His Highness, Prince Yule. Despite this, a firm resolve took hold. She became certain that if she could just learn to use magic, she would surely be able to win His Majesty's favor. This belief fueled her efforts. She had always idolized the wondrous magic from old fairy tales. Day after day, she immersed herself in her studies, confident that she would one day succeed. A sudden burst of power emanates from her practice. The memory fades, returning to the present moment after her lesson. The elderly tutor stares down at the young princess with a stern, unreadable expression. Marietta meets her gaze, a silent tension filling the space between them. She peeks around a corner, a small, hesitant sound escaping her as she observes her own study area. Her studies are not going well. Seated at her desk, she sighs in frustration, admitting to herself that she has failed once again. Though she understands the theory of how magic power works and has memorized the spells, the results are non-existent. She stares down at her open palm, a silent testament to her inability to conjure even a spark of magic. The weight of her situation presses down on her, as she realizes with growing dread that there will be no forgiveness if she fails the upcoming ritual. Her tutor's voice cuts through her anxious thoughts, addressing her as Marietta and reminding her that she must succeed for the sake of the kingdom's subjects, no matter the difficulties ahead. The princess's mind drifts to the reason for this immense burden. Tears well in her eyes as she thinks of her father and mother, whispering an apology. The kingdom of Snoo suffers from such heavy snow that crops cannot grow, making them entirely dependent on food imports from Jilvara. The memory of her tutor's arrival plays in her mind. The instructor had formally announced herself to Princess Marietta, stating bluntly that failure in the ritual was not an option. Her reaction to the grim warning, however, was startling. A bright, determined smile spread across her face as she declared she was ready and vowed to make the summoning ritual succeed no matter what. Her tutor then mentioned a particular theory, that the summoning could be completed not just with magic, but through prayer. During a magic history lesson, the tutor elaborated on this alternative. She explained that while a prayer could theoretically work, it was considered impossible, as there had never been a single recorded case of it succeeding in the past. Marietta listened, absorbing the information. Despite her tutor's skepticism, a spark of hope ignited within the princess. She recalled reading something similar in a fairy tale, a story where a holy beast answered a prayer for help. The tale suggested that if one prays every day without fail, their wish might be granted, solidifying her new resolve. She clung to the hope offered by the old fairy tale, the words echoing in her memory. A kind holy beast might just answer her summons. The memory sparked a desperate plan. She recalled her younger self, kneeling on the cold stone floor, her small hands clasped as she began a heartfelt plea, thinking, "Dear holy beast, if my prayer reaches you." She had prayed with all her might, pleading for her summons to be answered on the very day that Prince Yule would ascend to the throne. Her childhood, filled with such prayers, passed within the lonely confines of that tall, stone tower. Years later, on the day of the ceremony, the castle is a whirlwind of frantic activity. Maids rush through the halls, their voices overlapping in a chorus of urgent tasks. One searching for a lost ribbon, another calling for essential oils to be put in the bathwater. The frantic preparations intensify. Shouts echo to bring the shoes for the ceremony quickly and to double-check every last detail, while others lament the lack of towels and flowers and demand to know if the wedding dress is ready. Amidst the flurry, a maid finds her way to the now 18-year-old crown princess of Jilvara, Marietta. The maid informs her that it is time for the ceremony. Marietta, her expression calm, agrees to go. She walks through a grand archway, her thoughts turning inward. Today is the day of the summoning ritual and her wedding, yet the prince has never once come to see her. As the bells for the coronation ceremony toll, she quietly wishes that they might get along as spouses. Her moment arrives. Dressed in her full ceremonial gown and holding the ritual staff, she steps into the grand hall as a voice announces the entrance of the crown princess, Marietta von Schnobel. As she proceeds, her father offers words of encouragement. He reminds her of her long preparation, practicing the movements and reciting the words over and over, expressing his confidence that she will be able to perform the ritual correctly. She stops abruptly, her eyes widening as she takes in the scene before her. Her gaze lands on a young man watching from a balcony, his light-toned eyes holding a cold, appraising look. The priest's voice echoes through the hall, formally announcing the presence of her fiancé, Prince Yule. The prince's sharp, disdainful expression does not waver. At the sight of him, her heart begins to pound violently in her chest, and her hand clenches around the ceremonial staff. Her grip tightens as a wave of fear washes over her. What if the summoning fails? She realizes that as punishment, restrictions would surely be imposed on food imports. Her own father and mother would face some kind of retribution. The weight of her kingdom's fate settles upon her. As these fears swirl, the priest's voice cuts through her thoughts, declaring the start of the summoning ritual. Steeling herself, she strikes the base of her staff hard against the stone floor. From his vantage point, Prince Yule watches the act without a change in his impassive expression. The staff's impact sends a shock wave of energy across the floor, causing the massive, intricate summoning circle around her to flare to life with glowing runes. Standing at the heart of the arcane sigil, her face now shadowed by her hood, she casts aside her fear. A single, powerful thought consumes her: it will succeed. Her resolve manifests as raw power. The orb atop her staff begins to crackle and glow as she pours her will into the spell, chanting a single, desperate plea. Beseech, beseech. She continues her chant, declaring, "And thus thou shalt receive my boon." With each word, she strikes her staff against the floor, the magical energy flaring with each impact. Thus struck, the gate is prepared. The orb atop her staff glows with immense power, her long hair whipping around her as the ritual reaches its zenith. As the final words are spoken, "Shall open for thee," a dark, jagged tear rips through the center of the magic circle. From that rupture, a colossal form of pure white light erupts, its sheer scale stunning Marietta into silence as Prince Yule watches from the side. The light solidifies, revealing a magnificent white dragon that now fills the chamber, its powerful head turning toward the small princess who summoned it. The priest cries out in astonishment, declaring it a magnificent white dragon, a high-class holy beast never before summoned in Jilvara's history. Overcome with joy, Marietta realizes she has succeeded. With this, the kingdom's peace is assured. A holy beast answered her call. Her eyes find Prince Yule as she basks in her triumph. Her triumphant moment is abruptly cut short. Suddenly, her world dissolves into an empty, black void, leaving her utterly alone and confused. She stands bewildered in the pitch-black emptiness, wondering what is happening and if anyone is there. Before her, another figure appears, a mirror image of herself. The other figure, a version of herself with sharp, knowing eyes, smiles faintly. A voice echoes in the void, filled with satisfaction. At last we meet. The witch's consciousness celebrates its victory internally. I did it, she gloated, her voice echoing in the mental void, declaring her intent to finally claim the spoiled princess's body for herself. Princess Marietta, caught between the real world and this psychic space, could only stare in bewildered shock, wondering who this malevolent figure was. As the witch began to turn away with a triumphant smile, Marietta reached out a hand, a desperate "why" forming in her thoughts. The shadowy form paid her no mind, already beginning to fade from her grasp. Her hand stretched into the encroaching darkness as the witch's figure receded into a distant point of light. A disoriented question echoed in Marietta's mind. Was she the one walking away? Suddenly, a violent, unseen force struck her consciousness, a jarring impact that sent a shockwave through her very being. The disorientation gave way to a chilling new reality. She found herself sitting within a glowing magic circle on a cold stone floor, clad not in her own gown, but in a dark, hooded robe. A single candle provided the only light in the unfamiliar room. Looking down at the strange clothes and the foreign symbols beneath her, she could only wonder what had happened and where on earth she was. Disoriented, a young woman awakens within the faint glow of a magical circle, surrounded by candles in a dark, unfamiliar room. Her first thoughts are a confused whisper, questioning where she is. She rises to her feet, her confusion deepening. She recognizes the markings as a magic circle, but questions what happened, as she believes she was in the Great Hall. A sense of dread begins to creep in as she wonders about the nature of the spell, a single word forming in her mind. Wait. Her gaze falls upon a scroll, her hand tracing the arcane script. The text describes a powerful magic, the ability to transpose two souls. It posits that the body is merely a vessel for the soul one is born with. As she continues to read, a horrifying realization dawns. The text states plainly that the journey is only one way, and that once transposed, a soul can never return. The finality of the words strikes her with alarming force. The phrase transposition magic echoes in her mind, prompting a frantic self-examination. She looks down, finally noticing her clothes are not her own. She questions what she is wearing and realizes she has never seen this specific transposition circle before, finding the entire situation impossible to believe. This mental turmoil is accompanied by a strange physical disconnect. A profound sense of unfamiliarity with her own body washes over her, leading to a panicked conclusion. Her soul has been swapped. With a small cry, she wonders if she has been turned into someone else entirely. Stumbling towards a reflective surface, she catches sight of her own face, letting out a small, questioning sound. The face staring back is undeniably hers. She touches her cheek, a flicker of confused relief passing through her as she confirms her own identity. But that relief is shattered by a memory that feels utterly alien. A life of luxury as a future queen, attended to by ladies-in-waiting. She recoils from the intrusive thought, crying out to stop it. This forces a more careful inspection. She looks at her hands, noting how battered and rough they are. Her hair feels dry and frizzy. These are not the features she knows. A grim understanding settles in. Though their faces are similar, this body is not her own. Now, inhabiting the witch's body, Princess Marietta pondered the uncanny resemblance between them. She recalled reading once about doppelgangers and wondered if their near-identical appearance, or perhaps a similar disposition, was what allowed the soul transposition magic to connect them. Her thoughts drifted back to the ritual, remembering the holy beast she had summoned just before everything changed. A declaration echoed in her memory, the witch's desire to take her blessed princess body. Marietta realized with a start that the sorcerer had targeted her from the very beginning. She could only surmise one reason. The witch wanted to become queen. The implication of this thought struck her with full force. If the witch was taking her place, then it meant that she, Marietta, no longer had to become queen. The idea left her utterly stunned. Her shock quickly melted into pure, unadulterated joy. She reasoned that since the other woman wanted to swap bodies, it was perfectly fine for her to take this new life and live as she wished. A delighted squeal escaped her lips. Amid her excitement, a new sensation took hold. For the first time, she could feel magical power coursing through her body. While she had never been able to sense or control magic before, it now felt intuitive, as if from long training. An idea sparked within her. Perhaps now, she could cast a spell. She focused her will on a nearby candle, uttering a single word of power, Fosha. Instantly, a flame ignited atop the wick. She stared in wide-eyed disbelief, amazed that she had actually cast a spell. The success was intoxicating. To cast a spell, just like that, felt like a dream come true. She gazed at her hand, giddy with the newfound power it held. Her thoughts then returned to the white dragon from the ritual. She wondered if it had truly answered her summons. Knowing that a pact with a holy beast is engraved upon the souls of both parties, she searched for that connection within herself and found nothing. The realization was clear. The one who had actually summoned the dragon was the witch. This only deepened the central mystery. She couldn't comprehend why a woman who possessed such incredible power, enough to summon a holy beast, would want to trade bodies with her. No matter how she looked at it, the motive remained elusive. Ultimately, she decided to set the puzzle of her doppelganger's desires aside. From this moment on, she was free. She was no longer burdened by the duties of royalty, the worries of the kingdom, or the cold gaze of Prince Yule. A smile of pure liberation spread across her face as the invisible chains of her former life shattered into dust. She clasped her hands to her chest, a wave of gratitude washing over her. From the bottom of her heart, she vows to absolutely cherish the new body she has been entrusted with. Having completed her first magical feat, she celebrates her success. Realizing she cannot return to her old life, she resolves to adapt to this new body as quickly as possible, deciding to explore her new surroundings and worry about styling her hair later. As she begins her exploration, she immediately recognizes the nature of her new home. It is a magic lair. She can feel the same abundant magical energy that now flows through her own body, permeating every inch of the room. After 8 years of studying magic theory, this unfamiliar place doesn't frighten her in the slightest. Her eyes scan the walls, discovering them covered in intricate magic circles. She deduces they are likely wards to repel intruders, perhaps with a command like abscond, villain. Recalling her lessons that such magical traps are always active. Her gaze then falls upon a ladder, and she surmises there must be a room upstairs. Deciding to investigate, she climbs the ladder. The room above is plunged into absolute darkness, and she exclaims in surprise at the pitch-black environment. Unable to see a thing in the oppressive dark, she wonders aloud if there's any source of light. A sudden realization strikes her. She remembers her newfound abilities and casts a spell, conjuring several glowing orbs of light that instantly illuminate the space. She beams with satisfaction, realizing that all her years of theoretical magic instruction were not wasted. Now, she can see clearly. Her light spell reveals the room's contents, or rather, the lack thereof. She looks around the empty, stone-walled chamber, puzzled to find nothing there at all. As her light plays across the floor, she gasps. Another complex magic circle is etched into the stone beneath her feet. Her confusion turns to alarm as she realizes the room has no visible exit. What kind of room is this? She wonders, her voice trembling slightly. Before she can process her discovery further, a low rumbling sound begins. The magic circle on the floor starts to glow, and she looks up in shock as the mechanism activates. She finds herself transported not into a trap, but into a library. The realization dawns that she was in a secret chamber, hidden by magic. The sheer coolness of it all excites her, even as she notes the entrance has vanished, likely only reappearing with a specific spell. Emerging from the library, she steps into a quiet hallway. Hoping to understand her new surroundings, she calls out, "Hello there. Is anyone home?" Receiving no answer, she wonders if the witch lived entirely by herself. She casts a spell to search the house, but the magic confirms her suspicion. There is no sign of anyone else. She confirms to herself that nobody is there. A wave of relief washes over her. If someone else were present, she has no idea how she could possibly explain that she, Marietta, had body swapped with the witch earlier that day. The realization sinks in. With the house completely empty, she is free to explore as she pleases. A determined smile lights up her face, and so, her tour begins. She moves from room to room, taking the details of the witch's solitary life, from the simple bedroom to the tidy bathroom. Her exploration leads her to a discovery that makes her gasp in delight. Her eyes sparkle with pure, unadulterated wonder. The room is filled with countless magic scrolls. She had never been allowed to read any scrolls in the mage's tower, and now she is surrounded by them. She spots scrolls for cat form polymorphing, flower blooming magic, dragon's breath, and even teleportation. It's all so incredible, and she eagerly decides to try one later. As she continues, she realizes something odd. All the mirrors in the house, even in the bathroom, were covered by sheets. Finding a dressing mirror, she pulls the cover away. In the reflection, she sees the witch's face clearly for the first time and notices something she missed in the dark cellar. A burn scar on the forehead. She touches the mark, musing that since she won't be queen, a scar doesn't matter. But then a thought strikes her. The witch must have been so bothered by this noticeable scar that she hid every mirror to avoid seeing it. The idea is startling. She touches her forehead, contemplating the implications of a large burn scar for a woman living alone. If it's only this prominent, she reasons, then some simple makeup magic should be sufficient to conceal it, deciding to try it out soon. As she lowers her hand, she gazes at it, a profound question forming in her mind. What kind of life did the previous owner of this body truly live? Her musings are cut short as she turns her attention to the window. She notes with disappointment that it's pouring rain. She had thought it was a sunny day, but it seems the weather has turned against her. Trapped by the downpour, her mind begins to race. She recalls her favorite childhood book, an anthology of witch fairy tales, and a chilling parallel forms. The figure in the stories, living in the woods, shrouded in a black cloak, matches her current reality. The question floods her with panic. Did she actually swap bodies with a witch? As her frantic thoughts overwhelm her, a small, dark familiar suddenly appears, roaring at her to be quiet. Startled by the outburst, she whirls around in alarm, exclaiming in confusion. But another, calmer voice cuts through the air, stating that it has been observing her for some time. The voice belongs to the gray cat, which pads toward her with an annoyed expression. It admonishes her, remarking that she has been running her mouth far too loudly. On a balcony overlooking a sunlit courtyard, the woman in the witch's dark robes stands beside her two familiars. The small, cat-like creature recalls the confusing events of a moment ago, remembering how a talking cat appeared before someone named Marietta, and how this woman is now saying annoying things. The cat approaches her cautiously, looking up as she questions its presence. It stammers, seemingly at a loss for words as it takes a hesitant step back. It looks up with a bewildered expression. Flustered, the woman raises her hands defensively, offering a quick apology and asking what it could possibly be saying in its right mind. The familiar bows slightly, introducing itself as Marietta and offering pleasantries. It then looks her straight in the eye, correctly identifying her as the infamous, reviled Nightdew Forest Witch. Hearing her new title, the woman's expression brightens unexpectedly. She seems impressed, remarking aloud that Nightdew Forest Witch is a cool double name, much to the cat's visible shock. Its surprise quickly morphs into suspicion. The cat sniffs the air around her, its eyes wide with disbelief as it demands to know what is wrong with her. The cat suddenly leaps onto a wooden crate, its fur standing on end. It points an accusatory paw directly at the woman, shouting her identity. From within the witch's hood, she lets out a cry of denial. Her demeanor shifts in an instant. With a bright, cheerful expression, she confirms the cat's realization, explaining that when she came to, she had found herself in this body. She leans in, asking with excitement if it finally understands that they have swapped bodies. She continues happily, reasoning that since she is now free and possesses a great deal of magical power, everything feels perfectly fine. The cat, however, stares back, utterly bewildered by her calm and cheerful acceptance of the situation. Noticing its stunned silence, she apologizes, asking if she woke it up. She then casually tells it to calm down and not disturb her sleep. The cat is left speechless, internally spiraling as it thinks that this situation is far beyond its concern. The familiar cat, still processing the body swap, clarifies its identity. It explains that it is a house cat and a familiar, bound by a cursed contract to a witch with a nasty personality. Hearing this, Marietta, in the witch's body, realizes the cat is one of the spirits. It continues, comparing its true role to that of a sacred being guarding the kingdom of Zelphara. However, it fell into the clutches of the hateful witch and was forced into a contract to protect this very house for 100 years. Marietta, listening intently, asks if the cat is here by choice, to which it vehemently denies. She processes this new information, deducing that since the contract is with the house and not the witch personally, the magic remained intact even after their souls were swapped. As she contemplates this, she reaches down and gently touches the bewildered cat's head. Her focus sharpens. Standing on the landing above, she unleashes a wave of magical energy. A vast, glowing sigil spreads throughout the room, originating from her very presence, as a single rune within it shatters. The surge of power makes the invisible visible. Chains of glowing, magical runes suddenly materialize, wrapped tightly around the familiar's body, causing it to cry out in surprise. Her gaze remains fixed, her analysis swift. She confirms her suspicion. It is a contract with the house itself. She reasons that since the power is tied to the house, the magical energy linked to the cat must be accessible from within. As her fingers trace the ethereal lines of power flowing from the runes, her eyes light up with discovery. "I found it," she declares. She immediately focuses the magic into the tips of her fingers. With a swift, decisive motion, she slices through the air, severing the magical connection. The cat below watches, its eyes wide with disbelief and shock. The chains of runes shatter, dissolving into harmless particles of light that drift away from her. On the floor below, the cat sits, now completely unbound, staring up in stunned silence. With the spell broken, she turns to the cat, her expression beaming with pure joy. She declares the contract canceled, announcing that from now on, it is free to go wherever it pleases. The cat, still processing its sudden liberation, can only stare back in utter confusion. His initial shock quickly curdled into fury. He shouted, demanding to know if she was truly that stupid. Not just a little, but profoundly stupid. A bewildered Marietta could only stammer in confusion as he continued, expressing disbelief that she had undone the contract herself. He then pointed out she had repeated his insult 3 times, asking why she would say something so mean. She asked why he was so upset, wondering if it concerned his own life. The cat corrected her, clarifying that it was her life at stake, as the knights in the town were actively hunting her. Marietta found this puzzling, asking what was strange about that, as if it were a perfectly natural state of affairs. His exasperation grew. He explained that the reason she was being hunted was because the witch who previously lived there had caused significant trouble. He then revealed the witch's greatest transgression. She had stolen the sunlight. Marietta, still processing, could only question what he meant by the sun. He elaborated that the witch had used powerful magic to steal the sunlight itself. As a result, a perpetual, thick mist covered the town and the surrounding areas, plunging even the daytime into a darkness as deep as night. A flicker of understanding crossed Marietta's face. She connected the pieces, asking aloud if this was the reason the sorcerer was known as the hated witch of the Nightdew Forest. With a quiet yes, she affirmed her own grim conclusion. The cat continued his dire explanation. Without sunlight, crops couldn't grow, and the townspeople were unable to live normal lives. He recounted that the house had been attacked by knights many times, but was always protected by a barrier of spirits. He then warned her that with the familiar contract now broken, that barrier was gone, and the knights would surely break in and kill her. Her response was startlingly naive. She suggested that if they simply removed the mist magic, everything would be fine. The cat recoiled, explaining that even if the magic disappeared, the grudge would remain in people's hearts. He insisted that canceling a contract does not mean forgiveness comes easily. This was not a simple story. She still failed to grasp the severity, quietly admitting her confusion. Marietta wondered aloud if a simple apology wouldn't be enough. The cat immediately dismissed her naive thinking as useless, stating that even if she said, "I'm sorry," the people would not simply forgive everything. Her gaze drifted towards the window, looking out into the dark forest. She quietly repeated the reason for her predicament, her voice tinged with a somber understanding. It was all because the witch who used to live there had caused so much trouble. Seeing her dejected state, the cat's tone softened. He quickly clarified that he knew this wasn't her fault and that it wasn't her doing. At his words, Marietta's somber expression vanished, replaced by a bright, relieved smile. She turns to the gray cat, her expression now firm and clear. She thanks the creature for telling her the truth about the past. A newfound resolve settles upon her face as she comes to a decision. As magical energy begins to swirl around her, startling the small, horned familiar perched on her shoulder, she announces her resolution with a radiant smile. From this day forward, she will live as a good witch. The declaration leaves the gray cat completely stunned. For some unknown purpose, the original, which had stolen the sunlight from a vast area that encompassed both the forest and the nearby town. This powerful magic cast the entire region into a perpetual, gloomy twilight, holding the light captive in a small, glowing orb. Above the witch's house, a massive and intricate magical seal hovered in the sky. Watching from a nearby crate, the gray familiar let out a skeptical sound, looking over at Marietta and asking just what she was planning to do. She turned to the familiar, explaining that she had tried to check for traces of magic inside the house. Her investigation led her to believe that the stolen sunlight was a necessary component to activate the soul exchange spell, a revelation that left the cat-like creature looking utterly perplexed. Continuing her explanation, Marietta elaborated that in order to focus the immense power of the spell onto the house, the witch had to monopolize the sunlight from the entire area. She deduced that this absence of sunlight was what made the land so dark and gloomy. The mist, she mused, was likely a natural effect from the region's many lakes. With a confident smile, she declared that since the soul exchange was already successful, the sunlight-stealing magic was no longer needed. With her decision made, Marietta raised her hand, releasing the stored sunlight. The massive magical seal in the sky shattered into pieces, its purpose fulfilled and its power broken. The mist, no longer sustained by the spell's influence, would now completely disperse. As the magical construct disintegrated, the small creatures of the forest cautiously peeked out, witnessing the sudden and dramatic change in their environment. The breaking of the spell cleared the sky, promising an end to the perpetual rain that had plagued the land. The familiar looked up, its expression one of pure relief, and exclaimed thankfully that the magic was undone. It then bounded towards Marietta, who was momentarily surprised by the creature's reaction, only managing to say, "You." The creature, however, quickly shifted to a more practical concern. It questioned if she truly intended to live as a good witch, pressing her on what she would do about the knights, as a simple apology wouldn't suffice. When Marietta dismissed the issue, the familiar demanded to know if she was serious. With a determined pout, she insisted that she was. She beams with naive optimism, declaring her plan to do her best to show sincerity and apologize to the knights until they forgive her. The familiar, however, looks on with a flat, unimpressed expression. Her familiar bluntly asks if she will be leaving now. Startled by his cynicism, she recoils and shouts that she doesn't want to hear any more from the gray cat. In response to her outburst, the familiar turns away with a disgruntled huff, seemingly walking off into the woods. Watching him depart, she quietly wonders if he really left. A flicker of concern crosses her face as she hopes aloud that the gray cat doesn't fall into the hands of another evil witch. Now alone, her attention is drawn upward. The sunlight she had just restored continues to pour down, gradually returning warmth and light to the forest. She shields her eyes from the brilliant rays, a small smile forming as she takes in the truly beautiful atmosphere she has created. With a sense of purpose, she turns back towards the witch's cottage, deciding on her next course of action. She briefly wonders what to do, but an idea quickly strikes her. Her first priority is set. It's time to eat. As she moves, she reflects on her past. While she only studied ritual magic in the tower, what truly fascinated her was witchcraft, the practical magic used to serve everyday life. She recalls always wanting to see food cooked by magic, and, at last, she could try for herself. Opening the pantry, she is amazed by the bounty within. The shelves are stocked with dried meat, fish preserved in oil and salt, various dried and boiled vegetables, and even precious salt and sugar. She examines the jars of provisions, all seemingly prepared by the witch. A pang of guilt strikes her for using them without permission, but she accepts as she has no choice. A witch's life, she reasons, is one of self-sufficiency. From now on, she must find ways to secure her own food. With that resolve, she begins to wonder what she should cook. As she inspects the pantry, she finds a jar of sugar, noting how carefully everything is wrapped and labeled. A wave of gratitude for the witch's thoroughness washes over her. She then recalls stories she read long ago, where delicious-looking bread often appeared, a simple luxury she's never known. The memory is bittersweet. Ever since she was a child, all her food had to be tested for poison first, meaning she was only ever allowed to eat cold meals. She closes her eyes, imagining what freshly cooked food might taste like, specifically warm bread topped with jam. It must be wonderful, she thinks. With a new goal, she gathers the ingredients for bread: flour, salt, sugar, yeast, oil, and water. All 6 are readily available. Her excitement builds, but then she begins a frantic search for jam, checking every shelf and corner of the pantry only to find none. Her shoulders slump in defeat. As she feared, there is no jam. In fact, she realizes with a sigh, there is nothing sweet in the pantry at all. Just as she loses hope, a spark of inspiration ignites. Deciding to try something else, she resolves to make it herself. Holding a bowl, she incants, Vartel, flow, O water, in a swirling current of pure, magical water materializes and pours into the container. Following her new plan, she adds 3 tablespoons of sugar to the magical water. She then begins to heat the mixture slowly with her own magic, stirring it gently. Her eyes widen in amazement as she watches the concoction begin to transform. The process is a success. A sweet, toasty aroma fills the air as the liquid thickens into a beautiful amber color. It's done, she declares, admiring the caramel sauce she has created. Tentatively, she brings a finger to her lips for a taste. The flavor explodes on her tongue. It is intensely sweet, a sensation so new and overwhelming that her eyes sparkle with shock. A blissful smile spreads across her face. To her, this is the very taste of happiness. She reflects on her past. Sweets were rarely allowed, with the excuse that they would ruin her skin. But now, there is no one to stop her. Filled with a newfound sense of freedom, she decides she will use the caramel sauce as a substitute for jam. It is time to make the bread. She began by magically arranging her ingredients. A bag of flour, jars of yeast and salt, and a vial of what looked like sugar, all gathered around a large mixing bowl. With her magic circle and ingredients prepared, she announced her intention. Using a ladle instead of a wand, she explained that the first step was to combine the flour, sugar, yeast, and salt in the correct amounts. She then moved to the next step, using the ladle to magically knead the mixture in the bowl until the dough became perfectly smooth. With a series of magical commands, she pressed the dough, causing it to ferment and rise in an instant before neatly dividing itself into 3 equal portions. Taking a deep breath, she prepared for the final, most difficult stage, baking. She knew that controlling the magical fire was critical. Too strong and it would burn, too weak and it would stay raw. Focusing her intent, she unleashed a controlled burst of heat. The magical bread was complete, resulting in 3 perfectly formed, golden brown rolls resting on the baking sheet. Marietta stared in awe, exclaiming that this was fresh bread. Eager to taste it, she reached out to grab a roll, only to recoil as she realized it was still piping hot. Nearby, the familiar sniffed the air, drawn by the amazing and appetizing smell. Her yelp of pain was followed by the soft thud of the roll hitting the floor. As she stared in dismay, she suddenly recalled a passage from the witch's book. Even if food falls, it's fine as long as you pick it up within 3 seconds. Trusting the witch's wisdom, she picked it up and, after a moment's hesitation, took a bite, chewing slowly. The flavor exploded in her mouth. She was overcome, wondering how fresh bread could possibly be so delicious. The crust was crunchy, the inside soft and fluffy. Tears welled in her eyes as the simple, profound joy of it washed over her. She savored a second piece of the warm bread, tears of joy still glistening in her eyes. It was so much better than the cold bread she was used to, and she felt she could eat it forever. As she reached for a third piece, she decided to spread it with caramel sauce. But as she was about to do so, she froze. A dreadful thought struck her. She had forgotten the caramel sauce entirely. She looked down at the last bite, then ate it with a resigned gulp. A moment later, a small chuckle escaped her lips, which quickly turned into full-blown laughter. For some reason, she found the whole situation hilarious, wondering what she was even doing. Her joyful laughter filled the kitchen. It was a profound realization for her. It had been so long since she had truly enjoyed herself this much. Feeling that she was still not full, she made a new resolution. She would make more bread, and, this time, she would be sure to spread plenty of caramel sauce on it. Within the Valakline family territory, a cry goes up. The heavy, rainy clouds that have long shrouded the land have finally cleared, and someone urges the others to look at the sky. In response, the townsfolk emerge, their faces a mixture of shock and elation as sunlight bathes them. They exclaim in disbelief that the rain has stopped, declaring that the witch's curse has finally been lifted, a true blessing from the gods. Meanwhile, a peaceful, Happy life has begun for Marietta in her new body. She presents a platter with a bright smile, offering fresh bread she has just made with magic. The plate is piled high with perfectly round, steaming buns. She realizes with a start that she made far more than she had intended. She becomes flustered, covering her mouth as she admits to herself that she got lost in the witch's magical baking without noticing. Her familiar watches, cheekily suggesting she make one more. She wonders what to do, knowing the ingredients are precious. She continues to fret, acknowledging that the bread is delicious, but it's not an amount she can possibly eat by herself. A wistful thought crosses her mind. She wishes she could share it with someone. As if in answer to her unspoken wish, a loud, insistent knocking suddenly sounds at her front door. Her wish for companionship still fresh in her mind. She stands at the open doorway with a bright smile, calling out for the gray cat. She enthusiastically invites him to come and eat the delicious bread she has just baked. When he doesn't appear, her expression shifts to one of concern. She wonders aloud if he is not there, even though she can feel his magical abilities are still nearby. Covering her mouth, she seems to realize her mistake. Suddenly, the gray cat appears on a branch above, startling her with a furious shout. He calls her the biggest idiot on the continent, angrily questioning if she knows that fairies without a contract won't come when called. He points out that despite this, she came to him anyway. His tirade continues as he explains that he was coincidentally sleeping in the grass nearby. Since the lands outside the witch's house are still his territory, he complains that her shouting was unbearable for his ears. Abashed, Marietta offers a quiet apology and asks what he needs. She then presents her original offer, explaining that she baked fresh, delicious bread and asks if he will eat with her. The cat is taken aback, staring at her with suspicion and demanding to know why she is giving him bread. His distrust is palpable as he questions if she has some ulterior motive. Marietta quickly denies it, looking genuinely confused as she asks if he thinks she is holding something back from him. She firmly shakes her head, reassuring him that he is not to blame for anything. Instead, she proposes that he view her offer as an apology regarding their contract. Addressing him directly as Gray Cat, she clarifies her intent. She wants the shared meal to be a greeting and a sign of rapprochement between them. With a hopeful smile, she asks if they can eat the bread together. After a moment of consideration, the cat finally agrees. He states that since she insisted so much, he will eat with her. A look of pure delight crosses Marietta's face as she thanks him. With their new understanding settled, she presents a plate piled high with glistening, freshly baked bread rolls, inviting him to enjoy and be well. She smiled warmly, gesturing to the table laden with freshly baked goods. She explained that she had baked a lot, and he should take as much as he wanted, adding that there was tea as well. He watched her for a moment before cautiously reaching for a piece of bread, his movements deliberate as he began to chew. The first bite was a revelation. He swallowed with a thoughtful gulp, the unexpected flavor registering on his face. She leaned forward, eagerly asking for his opinion. The cat, attempting a nonchalant tone, declared it not bad. Her face immediately brightened with relief. Encouraged, she tried to piece herself, this one drizzled with caramel sauce. A look of pure bliss crossed her face as she savored it, murmuring that it tasted like happiness and paired wonderfully with the tea. As he watched her, she added thoughtfully that eating like this was so much better than eating alone. The realization prompted her to exclaim with delight that it was all much more delicious this way. The cat, now holding his own teacup, seemed to agree. The pleasant meal was suddenly interrupted when an idea struck her. She startled the cat by abruptly asking if he wanted to live there with her, leaving him utterly bewildered. She quickly elaborated, explaining that she wanted to try more of the witch's magic and cook delicious food. She then formally invited him to live there and eat her cooking with her. The cat considered her words, his mind picturing a comfortable bed and more delicious meals. She confessed that she felt lonely living by herself and would be very happy if he stayed. He misinterpreted her offer, asking if she meant for him to guard the place as he used to. She quickly corrected him, insisting that was not what she meant at all. He remained uncertain about his role, but Marietta quickly clarified her intentions. She explained that she had no desire to bind him there by force, assuring him that he was free to leave whenever he wished if he grew bored. She then revealed her true desire, her expression earnest and hopeful. In a way, she wanted to be his friend. The cat stared back, his large eyes wide with surprise at this unexpected proposal. As she gently placed her hand on his head in a gesture of affection, the cat silently processed her words. A friend? The concept seemed foreign to him. Marietta, noticing his hesitation, affirmed her wish with a firm yes. He remained skeptical, his mind racing through the terms she had offered: sleep, 3 meals, and freedom. He had to be certain, asking if she would trick him after promising such conditions. Marietta, far from being offended, seemed delighted by his caution. After a moment of consideration, he finally gave his answer. He would stay. Overjoyed, Marietta exclaimed her thanks as the cat formally accepted his new place in the house. As they settled into this new arrangement, Marietta poured him more tea. She then turned to him with a curious smile and asked a simple question. What was his name? He paused, cup in hand, and explained that as a fairy, he did not possess a name in the way humans do. Marietta listened thoughtfully before making a proposition. She asked if she might be allowed to choose a name for him. He considered this for a moment before granting her permission to do as she wished. Her mind immediately went to his most obvious feature, his gray fur. An idea struck her, and she excitedly proposed the name Grigio. The cat, unimpressed, asked if it simply meant gray. Marietta confirmed that it did, in a foreign tongue, but insisted it suited him. After a brief pause, he conceded that having a name was better than being nameless, and accepted it. With his acceptance, Marietta beamed, formally addressing him by his new name. From today, I'm glad to know you, Grigio. The newly named cat looked up at her, his expression attentive as he took in her words. In a gesture of mutual respect, he placed his paw upon her outstretched hand. He returned the sentiment, stating that it was likewise an honor to know her, Marietta. In a well-appointed room, an aide's urgent voice cuts through the quiet, calling out to his superior with a report from outside. The man being addressed, Crown Prince Yuri, turns with a calm, knowing expression, stating he is already aware. His subordinate continues the report, confirming that the rain has stopped and the mist covering the territory has vanished, just as Yuri predicted. The mage's report corroborates this, concluding that the witch's curse has finally been lifted. His subordinate then asks if, as expected, it was the witch herself who was responsible. Yuri affirms that this is the most likely explanation, his thoughts conjuring an image of the witch with a faint, knowing smile. He remains skeptical, however. The aide voices his own confusion about the timing, and Yuri reflects on their long war against her. He finds it unbelievable that the witch would lift her own curse so easily, leaving him to puzzle over who truly broke it. Meanwhile, far from the prince's troubled thoughts, the one responsible for this change enjoys a peaceful moment. The so-called reviled night-dew forest witch, now Marietta, sits calmly at a small table, sharing tea with her new companion, Grigio the cat. Now, inhabiting the body of Marietta, the witch begins a new life. Under the guidance of the familiar Grigio, she sets out into the woods, carrying a basket. Their destination is a part of the forest where frostberries grow. Her companion seems to be enjoying this transformation from a lonely existence to a life of purpose, proudly declaring that his days are now full of accomplishments. In the first week since arriving at the witch's house in the forest of night fog, Marietta's diary entries chronicle a life lived busily. She has taken up cooking, explored the garden, and foraged for wild herbs. Every moment is a new and exciting experience for her. One such wonder was discovering that she could trade bread for eggs. By placing bread on a magic circle, a creature identified as a forest chicken named Coco appears to make the exchange. Her days are filled with this newfound freshness and wonder. This newfound ease extends to her magic. She realizes that as her soul synchronizes with the witch's body, she has become able to use multiple spells at once. Even preparing a multi-course meal of a cheese omelet, salad, and mushroom soup is no longer a problem. As she enjoys her meal, a practical thought occurs to her. Although the house is well-stocked, she will eventually need to travel to the city for more supplies. She turns to Grigio, asking him how the previous witch managed her shopping. He confirms that the city is very far away. This prompts Marietta to speculate if the original witch used the great white dragon for transportation. The very idea of riding a dragon seems to startle Grigio. He quickly clarifies the reality of the situation. The journey from the house to the city takes 3 hours on foot, meaning a round trip would take a grueling 6 hours. Marietta is shocked by the distance, doubting her ability to walk that far. Faced with this daunting prospect, she wonders what to do. Seeing her hesitation, Grigio offers a logical solution. She should summon a familiar of her own to help her. She considers the journey, deciding it would be best to think about going to the city only when she truly needs to. As she walks through the forest, her familiar suggests she change her appearance before going into town, asking if she has forgotten her true form. He reminds her that she is the hated witch of the forest of night fog. The realization strikes Marietta, who covers her mouth, admitting that he is right. She then suddenly remembers the many transformation scrolls she found in the attic, realizing they were likely intended as disguises for trips into the city. It makes perfect sense. Considering the sun was blocked out for an entire year, she can easily imagine how much trouble the previous which caused the townspeople. Her thoughts conjure an image of her predecessor standing alone in the blighted woods. The cat confirms her fears, explaining that the state of the forest was not good because the witch had stolen the sun, plunging the land into constant, misty rain. She realizes the situation was far more dangerous than the books led her to believe. Her familiar explains that when a forest deteriorates, it leads to the summoning of monsters, which is why the forest now has more than it used to. In response, Marietta kneels and unleashes her power. A brilliant wave of magical energy bursts from her, spreading throughout the immediate area and revitalizing the woods. The trees begin to sparkle with renewed life. She explains that she shared some of her magical energy with the plants and also used a spell to drive the monsters away, hoping this will solve the problem for now. Her familiar is shocked, exclaiming that a lot of problems occurred because of the previous witch. He recounts how constant rains cause crops to rot, fields to flood, and trade routes to become impassable swamps where adventurers got lost. He then warns her that she needs to be more wary of the knights than the monsters. Confused, she asks what he means, The cat reminds her of her vow to keep apologizing until she is forgiven. The weight of this sinks in as she realizes that even if she apologizes, they won't forgive her. As she despairs, her familiar tells her to do her best. She reflects on this, understanding that the townspeople and the knights won't believe or forgive her so easily. She's not the same person who summoned the cat and was forgiven right away. An inner voice encourages her not to get discouraged. She remained conflicted, clenching her fist as she struggled with what she should do. At the very least, she had to do something. Her internal debate settled on a simple, immediate goal. She announced to Grigio that they would be going berry picking. The familiar considered this, thinking to himself that he didn't dislike this simple, bright side of her at all. In the forest, she found bushes laden with fruit. She identified them as frost berries, noting that they ripen when layers of frost fall and are resistant to moisture, which is why they grew so well despite the misty rains. However, she observed that they were currently frozen solid. He, however, smiled smugly. Grigio explained that frost berries are actually one of the sweetest kinds of all. A grateful Marietta thanked him for the insight. An idea sparked in her mind. She proposed that if they made jam out of the berries, it would surely be delicious. Grigio gave an enthusiastic yes in response. She continued her thought aloud, adding that jam is, of course, a must-have with bread. Her face lit up with excitement, eagerly anticipating the taste of the finished jam. Together, they admired their basket, now overflowing with a big harvest. Suddenly, a loud shout of "He!" echoed through the forest, startling Marietta. Grigio advised that they should head back before it gets dark, since the forest is dangerous at night. She agreed. Just as they were about to leave, the sound of a heavy footstep stopped them. Grigio's eyes widened as he realized who was approaching, the one who had been hoarding the berries. Confused, Marietta asked what was wrong. The culprit was revealed, a large, plump squirrel standing with its arms crossed defiantly. As Marietta wondered if it was just a squirrel, the creature seemed to declare itself the true witch of the forest of night fog. The large squirrel, accompanied by a smaller sibling, explains that its family told them they couldn't eat the berries if someone else was present, which is why it was investigating. Realizing she has taken far too many, Marietta apologizes, but the squirrel asks her to wait. It then presents a large leaf laden with more berries, offering them to her as a gift. The two squirrels look up at her, pleading for her to accept. Faced with this unexpected generosity, Marietta hesitates, murmuring that she also needs to make jam. Grigio and the smaller squirrel both ask what jam is. Marietta worries aloud if there will be enough berries for her purpose, while the larger squirrel hushes its sibling, telling it not to get so close. She cheerfully explains that jam is what you get when you cook berries with sweet sugar. The squirrels, however, still seem utterly perplexed by the concept, with the smaller one asking its brother what she's talking about. Elaborating further, Marietta excitedly describes how delicious jam is, how it can be spread on bread, mixed in a cake batter, or even added to tea. The squirrels listen, captivated, as the smaller one exclaims how wonderful it sounds and that it wants to know what it tastes like. As she finishes her enthusiastic description, Grigio's ears twitch. He sharply interrupts, demanding to know if she doesn't remember. He reminds her that the trees bore so few fruits this year precisely because of the actions of the witch of the forest of night fog. As the realization of her past deeds dawns on Marietta, she falls silent, her expression filled with guilt. She apologizes to the squirrels, admitting that it was because of her that they suffered. Bowing her head deeply, she begged for their forgiveness and vows never to repeat her mistake. As Grigio calls out her name in concern, the larger squirrel sternly declares that it will never forgive her, placing the blame for their hardships squarely on her. As the squirrels begin to turn away, Marietta calls out for them to wait. She tells them it's all right and apologizes once more. The larger squirrel, surprised, asks if she truly means it, while Grigio quietly reminds her of the promise she just made. Grigio remains skeptical, folding his arms and asking who would believe such a promise. With renewed conviction, Marietta places a hand over her heart and declares that she will never again do anything to harm the forest or the townspeople. The smaller squirrel turns to its agitated sibling, questioning if they will forgive the girl. It reminds the larger one of their own principle. When you do something wrong, you apologize and show true remorse. Its plea becomes more direct, begging its brother to forgive her. After a moment of hesitation, the larger squirrel concedes, declaring he will forgive her this one time. Overcome with relief, Marietta clasps her hands and expresses her gratitude. She walks away from the encounter, feeling joyful. She tells Grigio how happy she is that they forgave her and that she promised to be a good witch and even share jam with them once it's ready. She turns to him, asking if he doesn't think it's wonderful. His response is not what she expects. He is quiet, his expression unreadable. When she calls his name, he admits he has been thinking. He then poses a question to her. Why is she doing this? She seems confused by his inquiry. He presses further, asking why she carries the burden of the original witch's guilt so naturally. Marietta insists that it is her fault as well, but then immediately corrects herself, declaring that she is not related to the witch and therefore not to blame. Her denial falters as she clarifies her meaning. She is not unrelated to the circumstances. She confesses that for her entire life, she has held a single, constant wish to be able to use magic. With that power, she muses, everything could have been solved, the summoning of the sacred beast, securing the future of the country. However, she comes to a profound realization. The true wish hidden deep within her heart was not about duty. It was, she confesses to the night sky, the desire to abandon her duty as a princess. Grigio, held in her arms, can only stare, speechless at the revelation. A gentle smile touches her lips as she suggests that perhaps this entire situation occurred because the original which granted her deepest wish. Grigio internally dismisses the idea as impossible, but Marietta's knowing glance suggests she understands his skepticism. She explains her reasoning. As long as she chooses to live as the Witch of the Forest of Night Fog, the original witch's sin becomes her own by extension. Grigio finds the logic strange, but if she is satisfied, he has nothing more to say. Marietta thanks him, much to his surprise, and he questions why she is thanking him now. She smiles gently, teasingly asking Grigio if he's worried about her. The cat, flustered, stammers a denial. With a final, enigmatic smile, she turns and walks away down a path lit by glowing orbs, heading toward a rustic house in the distance. Interpret it however you like, she calls back over her shoulder, leaving a stunned Grigio to exclaim in disbelief. In her new life, the witch decides to make some special jam. In the kitchen of her quaint home, she begins by pouring citrus juice into a large pot, followed by sugar and a special ingredient, frostberries. These particular berries are perfect for jam once they are melted by the sunlight. She carefully puts them all into the pot with the other ingredients. To ensure her creation is perfect, she employs her magical skills. She had previously drawn a magic circle at the bottom of the pot to increase the jam's shelf life and preserve the fruit's vibrant color. Furthermore, she imbues the mixture with a blessing, ensuring that anyone who eats it will feel energized. With all the magical preparations complete, she begins the final step. Using her powers, she levitates her ladle and starts to boil the mixture down, her expression one of joyful concentration as she works to transform the ingredients into delicious jam. As the magical boiling process concludes, the mixture in the pot transforms. The frostberry jam is now ready, its surface shining with the deep, rich color of a ruby. Her familiar, Grigio, notes its sweet and wonderful aroma. She beams with satisfaction, declaring her work perfect. With the jam finished, she carefully portions it into jars and lines them up neatly on the pantry shelf, her task complete. Her thoughts then turn to her anticipated guests, the squirrel siblings, and she wonders when they will arrive. In preparation, she has also made biscuits and bread, baking the biscuits twice to ensure they last longer. She quietly hopes they will enjoy the treats, feeling a flutter of excitement at hosting guests for the very first time. With that, she begins tidying up with magical enthusiasm. Her familiar, Grigio, watches from a nearby crate and asks if she ever gets tired from being so active all day. He seems surprised to find her awake and working so hard, questioning if cleaning for guests is truly fun for her. She pauses her cleaning to answer him, her expression soft and content. She explains that her days are now full and satisfying. She can sleep whenever she wants and do whatever she pleases. With a small, happy smile, she concludes that every day is enjoyable. She holds up her freshly cleaned cloak, admiring how pristine it now looks. A voice from nearby remarks that she must truly be the happiest witch in the world. A sudden knock at the door interrupts her. Her eyes widen in surprise, then light up with excitement as she realizes her guests have arrived. "What should I do, Grigio?" she asks, flustered. "It looks like the squirrels are here." Her familiar, the cat Grigio, tells her to calm down. She panics slightly, feeling she must welcome them properly. Grigio advises her to just open the door like usual, warning that getting too worked up will only startle them. Taking his advice, she pulls up her hood and agrees. "Right, you're right." With a hand to her chest, she takes a deep, steadying breath. Grigio asks if she has calmed down, and she confirms she has. Thanking her familiar, she moves towards the door, ready to greet her visitors. She throws the door open, her cheerful voice echoing from the cottage. "Welcome." Her welcoming smile freezes. Standing before her is not who she expected. As she offers a jar of her delicious jam, her expression shifts to one of confusion. A tall, unfamiliar man stands at her doorway. The visitor's expression is serene, his light-toned eyes regarding her with a calm, steady gaze. She remains frozen in the doorway, her eyes wide with surprise at the unexpected guest. A thought flashes through her mind. What a beautiful person. She wonders who the stranger could possibly be, a soft wow, escaping her thoughts as she takes in his appearance. Snapping out of her daze, she bows her head in a quick apology. "Sorry," she says, explaining. "I stared without meaning to. I thought you were one of the squirrels I know." She inwardly fretted over whether it was rude to mistake him for a squirrel, realizing she had never imagined a human would come to visit. Seeing him just standing there, she decided to invite him inside, worried that he might be angry. The man accepted silently, stepping into her home. She led him to a small table, asking him to wait for a moment while she prepared tea and sweets. Once in her kitchen, she marveled at the surprise of having a male visitor. With a practiced flourish, she used magic to hasten her preparations, commanding the elements as a teapot, cups, and jars floated into place. Her thoughts raced as she worked. Since he had gone to the trouble of visiting, she felt she should treat him properly. She pondered his identity, certain he wasn't an acquaintance of the witch, and wondered where she had put the dishes for guests. Suddenly, a panicked shout shattered the quiet. Her familiar, the gray cat, cried out, demanding to know why there was a knight in the house. He frantically pointed out that their guest was carrying a sword at his waist. The witch, still focused on her hosting duties, looked up in mild surprise, questioning if he was truly a knight. The familiar continued his scolding, reminding her that one should always check if a guest is armed before letting them in. Looking small and apologetic, she admitted that she hadn't noticed. Grigio then explained that the man was a knight in the service of the local lord. He bore the crest of the eagle and the lion, which identified him as part of a special order of knights belonging to the Fauchrelian family, the rulers of the town. The revelation struck her. Her eyes widened in horror as she connected the pieces. This man was the very knight rumored to be targeting the life of the witch of Yuno Forest. She stood paralyzed by shock, having just welcomed the person who supposedly wanted to kill her into her home. As she wondered what to do, her familiar declared it was unthinkable to serve tea to a potential assassin. The witch was left trembling, caught between her duties as a host and the instinct for survival. She tried to rationalize the situation, concluding that if the knight truly intended to kill her, he would have struck the moment she opened the door. Perhaps, she reasoned, he was simply wary and cautious, this being a witch's domain after all. Her familiar, Grigio, remained unconvinced, pointing out that the knight hadn't looked her straight in the eye. The witch countered, stating that she didn't believe his gaze was that of someone who wanted to kill her. She gently stroked the cat's head, thanking him for his concern and calling him kind. A memory surfaced of Lord Yule, whose eyes, she recalled, were far colder than this visitor's. Smiling, she told Grigio she was glad to hear his worries, but playfully insisted her caution was for her own self-defense, not for his sake. She didn't want to entertain any more frightening thoughts. Having composed herself, she presented her guest with a plate of biscuits filled with forest herbs and frostberry jam, served alongside herbal tea. She expressed her hope that he would like the taste. The knight remained silent, his gaze fixed on the food. Seeing his hesitation, the witch grew flustered, asking what was wrong and quickly reassuring him that there was no need for concern. Realizing the cause of his suspicion, she quickly took one of the biscuits and ate it, followed by a sip of tea. With the food tested, she looked at him and declared that there was no poison in them. Embarrassed by her own actions, she apologized and offered to brew the tea again. The knight watched her impassively as she then urged him to please go ahead and eat. An awkward, heavy silence fell over the table, broken only by the thin trails of steam rising from the teacups. As the silence stretched on, her mind raced. Was he still too wary to accept tea from the witch of the Misty Night Forest? Or was he merely waiting for a chance to hunt her? She considered that he might be a noble, and that in high society, the higher-ranking person speaks first. Deciding it would be impolite to wait, she resolved to break the silence, addressing him simply as Sir Knight. She breaks the tense silence, offering a bright smile as she introduces herself. "I am Marietta, the witch of the Morning Mist Forest," she declares, adding that it is an honor to meet him. Internally, she reflects on her clever name change. Since the mist of darkness has cleared, Morning Mist Forest sounds much more pleasant than her old title, Witch of the Night Mist Forest. The knight simply listens, his expression unreadable as he processes her words. Her new title seems to have only deepened his confusion, as he mutters about morning mist versus night mist. Misinterpreting his bewilderment, the witch cheerfully apologizes for the confusion and asks for his name. He responds curtly, "I'm Dee." Delighted, she addresses him formally as Sir D. Repeating the name Sir D, she again states with a warm smile that it is an honor to meet him. Her formal pleasantry seems to catch him off guard. He questions her sincerity, asking why she would consider it an honor to meet him, given that he is a knight. His pointed question makes her falter. A sudden realization dawns on her as she processes the inherent conflict in her words, a witch extending honor to a knight, her natural enemy. She lets out a small, flustered ah. Her entire demeanor shifts in an instant. Dropping all pretense of social grace, she stares at him directly and asks bluntly, "You came here to get rid of me, didn't you?" The accusation hangs in the air, stunning them both. The witch is horrified that she actually said the words aloud. Dee is visibly taken aback. Watching from the roof outside, the familiar Grigio facepalms, exasperatedly thinking to himself what a fool Marietta is for asking such a thing so directly. Having blurted out her panicked accusation, the princess, now in the witch's body, hastily tries to recover. With a flustered smile, she offers her guests some herbal tea and a cookie topped with raspberry jam, all while frantically wondering what she should do next. In the midst of her internal turmoil, Sir D appears before her, his expression unreadable. "Here you are," he states calmly, causing her to gasp in surprise. He continues to watch her, his silence unnerving. The true princess apologizes, admitting her behavior is embarrassing. Seizing the moment, the witch in the princess's body speaks up, suggesting that her actions as a witch might have caused everyone to distrust her now. The reincarnated witch then looks directly at Sir D and declares her intention to atone for the sins she has committed. Hearing this, the real princess, still in the witch's robes, is taken aback and questions Sir D, asking if he is watching her specifically. She elaborates on her plan, asking Sir D to see with his own eyes that she is a witch who harms no one. She expresses a hope to one day become someone who helps the townspeople, even if she can only use simple magic for now. She acknowledges that trust must be earned slowly, through sincere and calm behavior. He listens to her proposal, his gaze fixed and intense as he processes her words in the heavy silence. His thoughts reveal his reasoning. He is inherently wary of witches, but he also recognizes that this one does not attack without reason. He concludes that her request for him to watch over her must be the right decision. The witch, however, has a moment of self-doubt. She reflects on her past actions toward the townspeople and wonders if it is truly permissible to make Sir D help her atone. The real princess, meanwhile, simply looks on, bewildered. She voices this doubt, apologizing for making such a reckless and annoying request. To her surprise, Sir D simply responds, "I understand." Her eyes widen slightly at his immediate acceptance. She asks for confirmation, and Sir D clarifies his terms. He will place her under surveillance, so he can personally confirm that she is, in fact, a good witch. She readily agrees. He adds a stern condition, however, promising he will not lie. If he judges her to be a danger, he will act accordingly. Her hands clench nervously as she takes in the gravity of his promise. Her initial nervousness gives way to pure elation. Overcome with joy, she grabs his hands and thanks him profusely, so happy that he has given her this chance. Her spontaneous gratitude catches him completely off guard, and she bumps her head against him in her excitement. She quickly apologizes, explaining that her joy was so great she lost her composure. He turns away, covering a slight cough, and assures her it's fine. She affirms that she doesn't mind his terms, but he gently advises her that it's better not to hold other men's hands. The realization of her social faux pas hits her, her heart pounding as she understands the implication. She quickly promises to be more careful. He gently withdraws his hand. She looks down, a blush of embarrassment creeping on her face as she realizes her spontaneous gesture was inappropriate. Later, while he sips the tea she prepared, he explains that its cold temperature is perfect, as his tongue is sensitive to heat. She immediately offers to make it again, insisting he shouldn't have to force himself to drink cold tea. He cuts off her protest by taking another sip and declaring the tea delicious. His simple, direct praise leaves her momentarily stunned, but visibly pleased. Buoyed by his compliment, she beams and promises to make something else for him on his next visit. She then pauses, a thoughtful expression on her face as she asks if something is the matter. She glances aside, explaining the problem. They're almost out of flour. Sir D listens, his expression unreadable as he processes this mundane, yet practical, piece of information. He stares at the small witch before him, baffled. After her request for flour, a simple yet profound question comes to his mind. How has she managed to survive until now? Marietta, taken aback, can only stammer in response. His question hangs in the air. He reflects that his duty was merely to watch over her, but now he finds himself suspecting her of something more. Pushing the thought aside, he asks what other necessities she needs besides flour, promising to bring them on his next visit. Marietta looks up, stunned by his direct offer of help. She immediately worries that she has nothing to give in return for the groceries, fretting that she will become a nuisance. When she asks if he will truly bring them, Sir D confirms with a simple, firm yes. He dismisses her concerns about an equal exchange, telling her not to worry. He states that the groceries should be considered a thank you for the tea and sweet she provided. Taking a sip from his cup, he asserts his authority on the matter, declaring that he is the one who decides the value of things. Marietta is deeply moved, thanking him sincerely and declaring that he has truly saved her life. He tells her not to exaggerate, but she insists it's true. The quiet scene is set against the backdrop of her small, isolated cottage in the woods. As a gesture of her own, she presents him with a small jar of raspberry jam and a handkerchief, asking if he will truly accept such a humble gift. He accepts. Beaming with joy, Marietta explains that they are just simple things and thanks him profusely for his kindness. With their business concluded, Marietta gives a small curtsy and bids him goodbye. Sir D watches her, his expression thoughtful as he processes their strange but pleasant encounter. He seems about to say something more as he turns to leave, but stops himself, simply saying it was nothing. He then formally wishes her safe travels. Marietta watches him, a hint of curiosity on her face. As he walks away, Marietta waves with unbridled enthusiasm, calling out a cheerful farewell and saying she looks forward to seeing him again. Sir D glances back, the corner of his mouth turning up in a faint, almost imperceptible smile at her display. As his figure recedes into the distance, Marietta watches from her doorway, a faint smile on her lips. Her familiar, Grigio, seems agitated, prompting her to turn and ask what's wrong. He chides her for being a carefree girl, but Marietta's expression turns resolute. She explains that Sir D has given her a chance to fix what she did wrong. She smiles, remembering how he listens seriously, and expresses her certainty that he is a good person, not the type to draw his sword on her. Grigio, however, remains unconvinced. The familiar's worry boils over. He pleads with her to be careful, insisting she doesn't know how to distrust people enough. Marietta, misinterpreting his concern as simple kindness, thanks him warmly. As the sky darkens, her thoughts return to the night. Worried for his safety, she resolves to prepare the cookie and tea she offered, ready for his next visit. This thought leads her deeper into reflection. She recalls the stark truth of her past, the fear she felt when she first learned that the townspeople harbored ill will towards her, a fear that they would do something to harm her. She acknowledges the source of their anger. The thick fog had changed their lives, and their desire for revenge is only natural. But a new resolve hardens her expression. Sirdi gave her chance. Now, she understands she must show the sincerity of her intentions. The question hangs in the air, a vow to herself. What can I do? The large squirrel, one of the siblings, devours a nut with immense satisfaction, proclaiming it to be delicious. The following day, the squirrel siblings visit Marietta. She has prepared a picnic for them and her familiar, Grigio, and warmly encourages them to eat until they are full, noting there is plenty of food. She holds up the nuts they brought as a souvenir gift, thanking them with a bright smile. She mentions hearing that humans roast and eat them, cheerfully promising to enjoy them with a hearty appetite. The mood shifts when the squirrel laments they could have brought better fruit if the forest were healthy. Grigio dismisses the nuts as ordinary compared to the witch's jam, sparking a brief argument. The mention of the forest decline visibly upsets Marietta, who quickly tries to assure them she isn't blaming them. Her distress transforms into determination. She announces her plan to revive the forest and asks the squirrels to lead her to the most afflicted area. The siblings stare up at her, stunned into silence by her sudden resolve. True to her word, Marietta rises and walks toward the blighted woods, her dark cloak trailing behind her. The two squirrels dutifully follow her lead. Standing amidst the desolate, leafless trees, she reflects. Since Sirdi's departure, she has been consumed by a single question. What can she do? Her thoughts crystallize into a new purpose. She realizes that instead of offering endless apologies, she must act to restore the trust of not only the townspeople, but also the creatures of the forest. With her eyes narrowed in focus, she concludes that taking direct action is the only path forward. Putting her decision into practice, she follows the squirrels as they guide her deeper into the woods. They urge her to hurry, leading her toward a place where, as she observes, the grasses and flowers have completely withered away. She followed her small guides deeper into the woods, who cautioned her to watch her step as the path ahead would become rough. Marietta acknowledged their warning, her expression resolute. As they progressed, the decay became more pronounced. It was not merely the grass and flowers that had withered. Even the towering trees were rotting from the ground up. The lead squirrel finally announced that they had arrived. A grim look settled on Marietta's face as a foul smell, thick and cloying, assaulted her senses. Before them lay a vast, stagnant swamp, its surface bubbling with decay. The squirrel explained that this desolate area was the worst part of the entire forest. Marietta could only stare, murmuring in disbelief at the sight of the swamp. She recoiled from the overpowering stench, realizing it was more than just rotting plants. The squirrel confirmed her fears, explaining that this corrupted bog used to be a drinking spot for the forest creatures. The squirrel continued its grim tale. The fog's influence had caused the surrounding plants to rot, transforming the area into a swamp. Creatures that came to drink would get stuck in the thick mud and be swallowed whole. The horror of this accumulated tragedy was starkly visible on Marietta's face. Her shock subsided into a quiet, grim understanding. She absorbed the full weight of the disaster, her expression hardening with resolve. The scene triggered a fleeting memory of her past life, the moment she had swapped bodies with the princess. She recalled how, at the time, she had been happy about the exchange. Pulled back to the present, she took a determined step toward the swamp's edge. The squirrels cried out in alarm, shouting for her to wait and warning that it was too dangerous to approach. Ignoring their pleas, she stopped at the very brink of the murky water. She closed her eyes and clasped her hands, sensing the countless souls that had met their end in this desolate place. She first offers a quiet prayer for the souls trapped in the swamp, wishing them eternal peace. Her moment of reverence is interrupted when a larger squirrel asks why her familiar isn't with her, mentioning that the gray cat, Grigio, is currently worried about Marietta. With a gentle expression, Marietta clarifies that Grigio is not her familiar. With a bright, genuine smile, she declares that Grigio is her friend. The squirrels react with delighted surprise at this wonderful revelation. She then asks the squirrels to do her a favor, warn all the nearby animals to stay away from this dangerous area. The squirrels immediately understand and agree. After thanking them, she also advises the squirrels themselves to keep their distance. As they retreat, her focus returns to the swamp. The suffocating smell assaults her senses, but she steels her resolve, knowing she must prepare for what comes next. She decides she must purify the swamp as quickly as possible. First, she will dispel the surrounding miasma. She recalls her previous life, remembering that she learned the basics of purification magic and practiced the steps hundreds of times. She is confident the procedure will not be an issue. With her plan set, she raises her staff. Magical energy begins to swirl around her as she initiates the complex purification ritual. Levitating within a sphere of light above the stagnant water, she commands the blight to be banished, shouting for the swamp to be purified. The spell's immense power takes an immediate, shocking toll. She pants for breath, stunned. She had not expected a wide-area purification spell to be this exhausting. It feels as though all her magical energy and physical strength are being wrenched away at once. Despite the crushing fatigue, she knows that if she stops now, everything will have been for nothing. Mustering her remaining will, she raises her staff high one last time, commanding the waters to become pure and beautiful. Her final incantation unleashes a colossal burst of radiant energy, engulfing the entire blighted swamp in a blinding, purifying light. As the blinding light of her spell recedes, it reveals a transformed landscape. The once foul swamp water is now pristine, reflecting the night sky like a dark mirror. The blight has been completely erased. She collapses to her knees, panting from the immense exertion. Her body is leaden. She can't move anymore. A single question echoes in her exhausted mind. Did it work? Lifting her head, her eyes widen as she takes in the sight. The air itself seems to sparkle with renewed purity. The change is absolute. The forest floor is clean, the water is clear, and life has returned. It seems impossible, yet the proof is all around her. Her gaze sweeps over the area, confirming that even the surrounding plants have come back to life, vibrant and whole. A small smile touches her lips. With the corruption gone, the forest animals will finally be able to feel at peace. Her moment of relief is shattered by a deep, menacing growl from the trees. Startled, she turns to see a hulking beast emerge. It's not a wolf, but a monster. A horrifying realization dawns on her. By driving away the miasma the creature depended on, she disturbed it. Panic sets in as she remembers she has no offensive magic, and her strength is completely spent. She is defenseless. The monster lunges, its massive jaws wide open. As it descends upon her, a single, final thought of despair fills her mind. This is the end for me. In the aftermath of the battle, the young woman in the dark hood looks on in horror. The man who intervened bears a deep, grievous wound across his back, dark blood soaking through his clothing. She lets out a cry of alarm. Despite the injury, he whirls around, sword held ready, having just dispatched the last of the monstrous beasts. His immediate concern is for her, and he calls out, asking if she is all right. The immediate danger has passed. In the now tranquil and purified forest, they both sit on the ground to recover. He looks over at her and gently asks if she is able to stand. As he observes her, a thoughtful expression crosses his face. He studies her features, a flicker of recognition in his eyes, as he silently wonders if she could possibly be someone he knows. His attention returns to her condition, asking if she is hurt. She quickly denies it, explaining that she is simply drained of energy after using a very powerful spell and will recover soon. He looks from her to the revitalized landscape, asking if it was her magic that purified the forest and brought it back to life. He marvels at the powerful purification spell, admitting he's never seen anything like it. She looks away, slightly flustered, confessing that she only meant to purify the swamp and didn't anticipate it would consume so much of her energy. She quietly murmurs his name. He then asks what brought her to this place. She explains that if he hadn't come, she would have been in real trouble, as she didn't expect monsters to appear. Her expression brightens when she learns he came carrying food for her. Despite his kindness, she attempts to send him away. She explains with a strained smile that her strength has completely collapsed and she cannot move. She asks him to forgive her and suggests they part ways, promising to repay him with food at their next meeting. He stares back, utterly bewildered. His confusion turns to incredulity. He questions if she truly expects him to leave her helpless in the forest and return to the city. He demands she repeat herself. Flustered and cornered by his logic, she can only let out a small squeak and plead for him to be quiet for a moment. She's told to stay calm by Sir D, who carries her effortlessly. He warns her not to bite her tongue, but she, flustered, demands to be put down. At his firm command to calm down, she falls silent, covering her mouth as he addresses her directly by name, Marietta. His frustration is directed at the provisions he brought, now lying abandoned on the ground. He asks what matters more to her, her life or the supplies, but she insists she doesn't want the food he brought to go to waste. After their brief exchange, Sir D continues carrying her through the woods. After some time, she speaks up, suggesting this is far enough and that she can walk on her own, having recovered her strength. He flatly refuses, declaring he can't trust her. He calls her reckless for reviving the whole forest at once, and remarks on how light she is, complaining about people who don't eat well. Marietta is stunned by his bluntness. He then tells her to simply be obedient for now, promising to get her home safely. His firm but gentle command leaves her wide-eyed and speechless. As he continues to carry her, an awkward feeling washes over Marietta. She wonders if she will be carried like this the entire way, held so close against his chest, her awareness shifts to the steady, rhythmic sound of Serdi's heartbeat. The sound and the secure feeling of his arms around her are comforting. She closes her eyes, relaxing into his warmth. Serdi finally arrives at a building, presumably her home. He looks down at the resting Marietta in his arms before turning his gaze to the structure ahead. Having brought her to the door of her small home, he watches as Marietta turns to him with a bright smile. She thanks him sincerely, addressing him as Serdi and stating that he saved her today. He quietly tells her that's enough, that there's no need for thanks. But she insists, explaining that he didn't just bring supplies, he saved her life. She presses the issue, asking how she can possibly reward him. In response, he gently takes her gloved hand. He tells her that the most important thing is for her to take care of herself. Then, as a soft glow emanates from their touch, he lowers his head and places a kiss on her hand. She looks at him, her expression soft, and explains that this is a blessing of thanks. She wishes for good fortune to find its way to him. He accepts her words, replying that he will honor her blessing with all his heart. As he turns to leave, Marietta calls out, asking him to come again. After his departure, Marietta sits on her porch, reflecting on the day's tumultuous events. She feels she must thank Serdi again and wonders what an appropriate gift might be. The feeling of being rescued has reassured her, but an immense wave of sleepiness begins to wash over her. The exhaustion is profound. She tries to think, but her mind is a complete blank. She gives in to the fatigue, slumping over in sleep. Yet as consciousness fades, a chilling realization pierces the fog. This is not simple tiredness. It is a curse. Her dreamscape is shattered by painful memories. A man's voice calls her an off-putting girl, then screams that she is the cursed girl and must be killed at once. A younger version of herself can only wonder why. The nightmare deepens, showing another tormentor from her past. A stern woman pointing an accusing finger, shouting that Marietta's presence is unwelcome and threatening to burn her right there. The memory echoes with a child's desperate pleas to stop, crying out that it hurts. She awakens with a start, her eyes wide with the lingering terror of the nightmare. Beside her, the familiar, Grigio, cries out her name in alarm, his voice filled with panic. He explains his actions, revealing that her temperature had been alarmingly high. Following the guidance of a home medicine book, he had fashioned an ice pack, hoping to cool her down. As Marietta weakly calls his name, Grigio confirms his presence. He explains his surprise, telling her she had suddenly screamed aloud, and asks if she had a nightmare. Noting that she hasn't eaten, he presents a bowl of bread porridge he also prepared, urging her to eat. Without a word, she suddenly pulls a small familiar into a tight, desperate hug. Startled by the abrupt embrace, Grigio cries out, questioning what she is doing. Her voice trembles as tears stream down her face. She quietly thanks him for staying by her side, unable to say more. Grigio looks on, his expression softening as he seems to understand the depth of her gratitude. He responds with blunt pragmatism, stating that he simply doesn't want to see scattered corpses in the house. As she holds him, a bowl of warm porridge resting nearby, a profound realization settles over Marietta. Despite everything, she is happy. Marietta's eyes flutter open. She finds herself in a bed, disoriented and confused. Her memory is a fog. She can't recall what happened the day before, nor how she ended up in this bedroom. As she sits up, she discovers the source of the weight on her lap. Grigio, the gray cat, who looks up at her with a placid expression. She greets him with a hint of uncertainty, her voice soft. G. Grigio. Good morning. He replies with a simple yeah, before wryly commenting on what a spoiled lady she is. Grigio then explains the situation. He tells her that she seemed so distraught the previous night that he grew worried and came to check on her. To his surprise, she had clung to him tightly and remained that way until morning. He leaps from the bed, declaring that he'll forgive her just this once. A flustered Marietta apologizes, realizing she must have used him as a hugging pillow while she slept. She quickly puts on a brave face, flashing a bright smile and insisting that she is perfectly fine now. Despite her assurances, Grigio's concern doesn't fade. He asks how she is feeling and cautions her not to overexert herself. Later, Marietta stands before a mirror, feeling embarrassed for having cried like a child and worrying Grigio. She ponders the strange, vivid dream she had, a dream that felt so real, yet whose meaning eludes her. Her thoughts are cut short as she truly sees her reflection. Her eyes widen in shock. She has terrible dark circles under her eyes, and even her freckles are more pronounced. A dreadful thought occurs to her. Could this be the physical toll of using strong magic? She looked around the rustic bathroom, noting the absence of any beauty tools and resigning herself to the fact. Deciding on a different approach to refresh herself, she extended a hand over a basin and commanded the water to rise. To wash away her deep fatigue, she decided to prepare a nice warm bath. With practiced ease, she summoned a small, dancing flame in one palm, commanding it to lift and rise, while simultaneously drawing water forth with her other hand. Holding the orb of fire perfectly suspended within a sphere of water, she smiled, satisfied with her control. She then gave the final command for the water to surround the flame, heating it instantly. Next, she began preparations for a special bath, invoking a magic composition formula. She mixed lemongrass and rock salt to create a powder specifically designed to ease fatigue, then added the resulting mixture to the hot water. With a pleased expression, she declared her witch's magical herbal bath complete. Sinking into the steaming, herb-infused water, she let out a long, contented sigh of pure relief. Submerged up to her nose, she reveled in the comforting warmth, finding it incredibly refreshing. It felt as if all her exhaustion was melting away into the water. As the magical herbal bath took effect, she noticed the marks from the wounds on her hands were fading. The sight triggered a memory of the first time she had bathed by herself, recalling how she had scrubbed her skin so hard it hurt, and her mother had chided her for being too rough. Her thoughts drifted to her past life. She realized that if she hadn't learned magic when she was a princess, she wouldn't even be able to perform a simple task like heating water now, especially since her body had changed so much. A sense of responsibility settled over her. She wished she could see how the town was faring, not just the forest she protected. Wondering if there was anything she could do from here, she began to summon the elements once more, calling for the winds to rise. Now dressed, she stood with her eyes closed in concentration, her arms raised as she directed the currents of air. The winds swirled around her, carrying with them small, glowing motes of light as she extended her senses outward. Her hair, now dry and clean, feels beautiful as she braids it. She takes a moment to appreciate this simple comfort. Her attention then shifts to Grigio, sleeping soundly on the floor. A pang of guilt strikes her as she realizes he must be sleep-deprived because of her. Deciding to let him rest, she resolves to prepare breakfast quietly, turning her attention to the ingredients Sir D had brought. Upon inspection, she discovers a preservation spell tag on the supplies. The collection is impressive: flour and butter, milk and sugar, and even cuts of meat. She's amazed to find a jar of honey among the items. The quality of the provisions is so high that she concludes Sir D cannot be just an ordinary noble to have provided such valuable goods. Later, the delicious smell of cooking food rouses Grigio from his sleep. He awakens to Marietta's cheerful voice announcing that breakfast is ready. She presents a plate of sizzling bacon, explaining that she grilled the meat Sir D gave them. With a smile, she admits she was growing tired of eating dry jerky that tasted like wood shavings. Grigio eagerly takes a bite from the fork she offers, his expression one of pure delight as he savors the flavor. Marietta enjoys her own portion, remarking how delicious it is, perhaps the best bacon she's ever had. Grigio explains that such quality is to be expected, as the local town raises livestock and offers its finest produce as gifts to the royal family. Seizing the moment, Marietta then asks him where exactly they are right now. His answer leaves her bewildered. She insists she has never heard of this place, despite having memorized the geography of the entire kingdom of Zelfra and its territories. Grigio, confused by her ignorance, clarifies that this is the Night Mist Forest, a place infamous for its thick fog long before the previous witch's arrival. He adds that her magic has recently caused the morning fog to lighten. He then delivers the stunning truth. They are not in Zelfra. They are in the Crystalursi territory, which belongs to the Valaklian family, located west of the great kingdom of Haudo. The revelation hits Marietta with the force of a physical blow, leaving her utterly shocked. Her shock was palpable as she stared at Grigio, her fork clattering against her plate. She shot up from her chair, exclaiming in disbelief that they were in the great kingdom of Haudo. From his seat at the table, Grigio calmly affirmed that they were. The history between the two nations was long and fraught with conflict. Long ago, Zelfra was rich in silver, while Haudo was rich in gold, and border disputes have been ceaseless ever since. Though Haudo far surpassed Zelfra in size and military strength, Zelfra had managed to repel Haudo's armies and even gain vassal states by using the power of its sacred beasts. Faced with this grim reality, Marietta anxiously asked Grigio what they should do. The cat noted their relationship had been tense for over a century before asking if she was all right. With a heavy heart, she confessed her true identity. She was the princess of the Kingdom of Snow who had married into Zelfra. Her body, she explained, had suddenly changed during the ceremony to summon a sacred beast. Grigio processed this revelation. He had known she was of royal blood, but it had never crossed his mind that she was the queen of Zelfra herself. The thought that she, of all people, had ended up in enemy territory was something he never would have expected. He issued a grave warning. She must take that truth with her to the grave. The words struck Marietta with terror as she envisioned herself being burned alive in public. She asked in horror if things would truly escalate that far. Grigio confirmed her fears by recounting a dark piece of history. He explained that Zelfra had once captured the king of Haudo and executed him publicly, burning his body with magical flames for an entire week for all to see. Marietta was aghast, admitting she had never heard of such an event. Grigio surmised the act was so brutal that it was likely erased from Zelfra's history books, but the people of Haudo had never forgotten the tragedy. His warning became more immediate. He cautioned that even the composed knight, Sir D, would likely turn against her completely if he ever learned she was from Zelfra. The implication struck Marietta, her eyes widening in sudden, stark realization. A heavy silence fell over the table. Marietta sat frozen, staring into the distance, the gravity of her situation sinking in. Beside her, Grigio quietly continued to eat his meal. The cat let out a sigh. He reflected internally that as if being trapped in the body of a hated, which wasn't bad enough, she now had a dangerously complicated past to deal with as well. Even he was more shocked by this turn of events than anyone. Suddenly, a voice spoke directly into Marietta's mind, telling her not to worry. Startled, she realized it was the original witch. The spirit calmly reassured her that no matter who looked at her, they would only see the hated witch of the night mist forest. As long as she kept quiet, her secret would be safe. She lets out a sigh of relief, thankful that she managed to avoid letting anything slip in front of Sirdi. Grigio, sitting opposite her, regards her with a serious expression. Her relief gives way to a wave of emotion, and she suddenly pulls the startled cat into a tight hug. As Grigio questions the abrupt show of affection, she tearfully thanks him, overjoyed that he is by her side. Meanwhile, in another part of the palace, the true Queen Marietta sits alone, gazing out a large window with a vacant, sorrowful expression. Her attendants, observing from afar, voice their concerns. They remark that ever since the queen summoned the sacred beast, she has been completely despondent, as if she's become an entirely different person. As they walk down a corridor, the two maids continue their discussion. One recalls the doctor's diagnosis. The queen state is merely a temporary side effect from the strain of the summoning ritual, particularly for someone with no innate magical ability. The other concurs, adding that time is expected to be the cure. They express their heartfelt wish for the queen's swift recovery, hoping that the cheerful, radiant Marietta they once knew will one day return. Unaware of this longing, the new Marietta, the witch in the queen's body, shares a bright, contented smile with her familiar, Grigio. With intense focus, Marietta holds her hands over the ingredients laid before her. She begins a magical analysis, intending to examine, identify, and precisely distinguish every component for her culinary project. Her senses quickly categorize the provisions: a premium thigh cut of chicken, tender pork from the shoulder, and the finest sirloin fillet of beef. With the inventory mentally cataloged, she now understands the potential of the meal she can create. As she contemplates, Grigio appears, questioning her activity. Marietta explains she's inspecting the meats Sirdi provided, as she must know their nature before cooking. The familiar teases her for being a glutton so soon after breakfast, but she dismisses the notion, stating she's simply preparing lunch. A new idea strikes her. With the red grape wine on hand, she will prepare a stew. She sets to work immediately. After searing the meat until golden brown, she adds vegetables that have been soaking in wine, then applies boiling magic to cook the mixture in the pot. In a separate pot, she prepares another component for the dish, sautéing mushrooms, carrots, potatoes, and tomatoes to build layers of flavor. She then uses grinding magic to transform the wine-cooked ingredients into a smooth paste, which she mixes back into the stew, adjusting the final flavor with salt, pepper, and sugar. Grigio, smelling the aroma, asks if it's already finished. Marietta confirms it is. She explains that while a traditional stew takes days, a magic cookbook reveals a witch's stew can be perfected in hours and tastes even better. Grigio can hardly wait to taste it. After applying a final 2 hours of boiling magic, she deems the stew complete. At that exact moment, a knock sounds at the door. Startled, Marietta calls out, "Who's there?" A small voice from below directs her attention downward to a tiny squirrel waiting outside. Opening the door reveals a cheerful gathering. The large squirrel exclaims, "It's me!" As its smaller sibling and two dark, round familiars also announce their presence. Marietta smiles warmly, welcoming them all inside. The large squirrel has already found a treat, marveling at the sweet, sticky confection. In the background, Marietta sits at a table laden with sweets, having evidently prepared for her unexpected, but welcome, guests. The squirrel, its cheeks full, declares the honey Marietta provided to be absolutely delicious. Marietta smiles, pleased that her gift is so well received. Having finished its treat, the squirrel suddenly remembers its purpose, looking at the bundles Marietta and her familiars are carrying and asking where they are all headed with so much baggage. Before she can answer, the animals present their own offering, a collection of mushrooms and nuts from the forest, laid out on a large leaf. They explain it is a sharing gift, a token of their thanks, and urge her to accept it without hesitation. They all chime in with gratitude, thanking her profusely for cleansing the forest. The squirrel explains that everyone in the woods was overjoyed by her actions. Marietta is visibly moved, her eyes shining with happiness as she thanks them in return. The animals then make a solemn promise. If anything ever happens to her, or if she ever needs help, they will all lend her a hand. The squirrel continues with more good news, reporting that the monsters are completely gone and the forest plants have recovered. It adds that even the spirits said they would come to visit and say hello when they have time. The mention of celestial spirits catches Marietta completely by surprise. Seeing her reaction, Grigio the cat clarifies that it is a very gentle spirit. He assures her there is no need to be nervous or to make any special preparations for its arrival. Her apprehension immediately turns to excitement. Hearing that the spirit is gentle, Marietta eagerly suggests that perhaps they can go to meet it right away. In response to this, Grigio sharply reminds her that she is supposed to be at home resting. He asks if she has forgotten that she had a fever just yesterday. Marietta protests that she is fine now, but Grigio counters, pointing out that she could barely even get out of bed. Her other familiars and the forest animals voice their concern, worried that she is still unwell. Marietta tries to brush it off, claiming she just used up a bit of magic energy, but the squirrel insists that doesn't count as being fine. Deciding she needs to rest, the animals say their goodbyes and depart, telling her not to worry about the spirit matter for now. Once they are gone, a moment of silence passes between Marietta and Grigio. She then turns to him with a hopeful expression, quietly asking if it would be all right for her to work a little in the garden. Grigio's ears twitch in clear annoyance. She is sternly reminded by an angry Grigio that working in the garden is also strictly off-limits. Intimidated by the familiar's uncharacteristic fury, Marietta clutches a stack of books and meekly agrees, promising to stay home and behave quietly for the day. Having accepted her confinement, she decides that a quiet day spent reading might not be so bad, especially given the house's large collection of books on magic. Humming to herself, she selects a few volumes from a shelf. As she prepares to settle in, her eyes widen in surprise. Her attention is suddenly drawn to a figure standing just outside the window. She opens the door to find her visitor is Sir D. A bright, welcoming smile spreads across her face as she happily calls out his name. She welcomes him, expressing her surprise at his unexpected visit. He explains that he was worried about her after the recent incident and had come to check on her well-being. Touched by his thoughtfulness, Marietta acknowledges his kindness. In response to his worry, she thanks him for his concern and cheerfully insists that she is in good health. He observes her for a moment, seeming to accept her words. Eager to show her gratitude, she offers him some stew she prepared using the ingredients he had previously gifted her. However, he begins to turn away, stating it isn't necessary, which prompts her to call out for him to wait. He pauses to explain his refusal. The ingredients were a gift specifically for her. If he were to eat them himself, it would defeat the entire purpose of the gesture. Surprised by his rigid logic, she counters by declaring that food always tastes better when shared with someone else. With renewed enthusiasm, she insists he join her and presents him with a bowl. As he silently considers her heartfelt invitation, her expectant expression suddenly shifts to one of shock. Her gaze fixes on something behind him, and though she asks what is wrong, her own wide eyes reveal she has seen something deeply unsettling. Her startled yes echoes in the doorway, a reaction to Sir D's question, not the small, shadowy familiar that had just appeared behind him. Though it's late to reconsider, a wave of anxiety washes over her. She worries about the potential danger, realizing that even a calm knight like him might turn against her if he were to discover her true identity as someone from Zelfra. He, however, maintains his composure, stating that he feels it would be improper for him to enter a lady's home. Desperate to get him inside, Marietta quickly dismisses the formality, insisting she is a witch, not a lady, and that there's nothing improper about it. Urging him to come in and have a seat, she promises to bring the food right away. As he waits alone at her table, Sir D's expression becomes serious. He reflects on her behavior, thinking to himself that she is completely careless. That very fact, he concludes, is exactly what worries him so deeply. Meanwhile, Marietta stirs the pot, a confident smile on her face. From her perspective, everything seems to be going smoothly. She decides that for now, she will simply keep a close watch on him for a while longer. Her concentration is broken when Grigio, her cat familiar, suddenly appears on her head, startling her. He immediately demands to know why a knight is in the house. As he shifts his weight, he warns her to be careful, but she brushes it off, her mind focused on the more immediate problem. She then announces that she has finished, having added a blessing spell to the food. He continues his lecture from atop her head, causing her to complain that he's tickling her. Ignoring her, Grigio puffs his cheeks in frustration, scolding her for her lack of caution. He asks how many times he must repeat that associating with a knight is dangerous, declaring that she truly has no sense of self-preservation. Her expression sobers. She acknowledges the risk, but explains that she cannot simply leave Sir D's kindness unacknowledged, especially since he saved her life. The thought gives her pause, and she quietly wonders what would happen if he were to discover her true identity. In response to her worry, Grigio relents. He agrees to watch over them while they eat, just to make sure everything is fine. Marietta's mood instantly brightens. Beaming, she declares that if any trouble does arise, they will simply run away together. Grigio looks on, exasperated by her cheerful oversimplification. With the plan set, Marietta returns to the table, telling Grigio she's leaving the watching to him. Sir D asks if her other companion isn't joining them. From the shadows, the small familiar explains that as a forest fairy, it would rather not be seen. Marietta simply tells Sir D that she will keep her eyes on him. Finally, she places a large, steaming bowl of stew before Sir D. Apologizing for the wait, she invites him to eat as much as he would like. He looks down at the meal she has prepared for him. He pauses mid-meal, his hand moving to his arm with a thoughtful expression. Seeing this, Marietta grows concerned, asking if something is wrong or if he did not like the taste of the stew. He reassures her that the stew is not the issue. He explains that an old wound had been aching since the previous night's rain, but the moment he tasted her cooking, the pain vanished completely, leaving him shocked. In response, Marietta reveals she put a blessing spell on the stew, explaining that a witch's blessing is like a spice that brings a little happiness. Sir D processes this, beginning to connect it to other recent fortunate events. The jam she gave him cured his caretaker's chronic back pain, and a venomous snake in his bed inexplicably did not bite him. He wonders if those incidents were also her doing. Her attention latches onto the most alarming detail. She's horrified to learn about the venomous snake, exclaiming that such an event is far from a simple prank and wondering aloud what kind of dangerous life he must lead. He seems to consider a question, then shifts the topic, asking if she also placed a blessing on him the day before, though he quickly adds that perhaps it is not proper for him to ask. He thanks her sincerely, suggesting he might only be alive today because of her actions. As Marietta beams, glad her magic was helpful, he gently reminds her to eat before her own food gets cold. After a quiet moment of eating, she looks up at him and timidly asks for his verdict on the stew. He confirms without hesitation that it was, of course, delicious. Overjoyed by his praise, she eagerly offers him another serving. Her delight is palpable. As she holds her spoon, she reflects on the feeling of being with Lord D. A warmth spreads through her, and she comes to a simple, profound realization. She is happy. Upon opening the door, Marietta discovers something unusual and urgently calls for Grigio to come and see. The cat, startled, asks what is happening and why she is shouting. Stepping outside, they are greeted by an astonishing sight, a massive pile of food, including fruits, mushrooms, and fish, laid out before them. Marietta spots a piece of wood with something written on it, pointing it out to Grigio. She examines the inscription and recognizes it as the language of the elves. The message is clear: thank you for cleaning the forest. Marietta realizes the food is a thank you gift from them. Her realization is confirmed. Grigio, noting that she can't hide her happiness, suggests they accept the gift gratefully. To prevent the bounty from spoiling, he proposes turning it into preserved food, an idea Marietta enthusiastically agrees to. After a period of diligent work, Marietta stands proudly before a fully stocked pantry, which now resembles a small shop with its neatly arranged jars and containers. She triumphantly declares that the task is finally complete. With their work done, Grigio announces that it is now lunchtime. He eagerly dips his spoon into a steaming bowl, ready to enjoy the fruits of their labor. Tasting the fish broth soup, Marietta marvels at how delicious it is. She happily remarks that thanks to the forest fairies, they won't need to worry about food for a while. Grigio agrees, suggesting they should go greet the spirit of the forest. Feeling her energy completely restored, Marietta eagerly asks if they can leave immediately. Her enthusiasm piqued, Marietta wonders aloud what the spirit of the forest looks like. She asks Grigio if he has ever met the spirit, but he admits he hasn't either. She then recalls hearing that the spirit lives in the great tree, which was born from seed of the world tree. In response, Grigio confirms that a small world tree does indeed exist in this forest. He explains its significance. It is the only being capable of storing the magical energy that flows from a moon, purifying it, and distributing it as the very core of the world. Hearing this, Marietta admits she is now getting even more nervous. Grigio speculates that this entity is most likely the Great Spirit, an ancient being said to have watched over and protected this land since before the nearby town was even founded. She looks up from her meal, perplexed, as Grigio tries to reassure her. He insists there's no need to work so hard, adding that even the squirrels said everything will be fine, but his words only seem to deepen her confusion. As they continue on their way, she remarks that the forest feels more lively than before, wondering aloud if she is imagining it. Grigio explains that it is the effect of her magic. The plants have begun to thrive again. With his explanation, she understands. A gentle smile spreads across her face, and she expresses her gladness that the forest has regained its vitality. Grigio le arte li agres. Her sentiment is met by a tall, cloaked figure who materializes before them. The mysterious being thanks her, stating that the forest has recovered because of her. Looking up in surprise, Marietta offers her own thanks in return. Grigio clarifies that this figure, and indeed all the forest's inhabitants, are expressing their gratitude and encourages her to answer them. Touched, she clasps a flower to her chest, her expression warm as she tells them they are very welcome. Having accepted their thanks, she and Grigio finally arrive at the world tree. Marietta gasps, struck by the sheer beauty of the ancient, massive tree before her. Standing in its presence, she can feel a sacred aura filling the space. She takes a breath and, with some hesitation, offers a greeting to the spirit she seeks. In response, a gentle light begins to shimmer and dance among the leaves of the great tree, signaling an awakening within. As the light intensifies, Marietta recalls what she knows of such beings. The spirit of the forest is about to appear, but the form of spirits is shrouded in mystery. They might be an unseen creature, a mass of light, or even take a humanoid shape. Some have no form at all. A surge of energy erupts from the tree, and Grigio exclaims that it's finally here. As Marietta wonders what form the spirit will take, a large, friendly-looking creature materializes from the light, offering a cheerful greeting. The spirit being, wreathed in a gentle light, introduces itself as My Love Tree, Taiwo. Below, a wide-eyed Marietta greets it in return, with Grigio beside her. She confirms its identity, asking if it is truly the spirit that guards the forest. Grigio, looking up from beside her, seems taken aback by its small, sprout-like appearance. In response to her question, the spirit gives a friendly nod, its simple face conveying warmth as it affirms that it is a pleasure to meet her. A bit flustered, Marietta agrees that it's nice to meet it too. The spirit extends a leaf-like appendage for a handshake, promising that from now on, My Love Tree will help her if she ever gets into trouble. Immediately after their contact, the spirit dissolves into a splash of water, vanishing completely. Marietta cries out, in surprise at its sudden disappearance. As she stands in shock, Grigio urgently shouts her name, telling her to look at the back of her hand. He realizes she has just formed a contract with the Great Spirit, a fact that leaves Marietta utterly confused. She looks down to find a glowing sigil, a leaf surrounded by elegant script, now emblazoned on her skin. She stares in disbelief, questioning how a simple handshake could possibly form a contract. Grigio explains the situation. He notes that while forming a contract with a spirit normally requires some kind of offering, the mark on her hand explicitly states, My Love Tree will respond to Marietta's summons without compensation. He can only conclude that the ways of great spirits are beyond comprehension. Completely overwhelmed by this revelation, Marietta holds up her hand, admitting she can't process it all. Seeing her distress, Grigio suggests they head back for now and try to understand it later. As they begin to walk away from the clearing, Marietta remains lost in thought, her expression dazed and confused by the sudden, inexplicable bond she now shares with the forest spirit. She arrives home to a bewildering sight, a crowd of forest animals gathered in her yard. Confused, she asks what they're all doing there. The creatures welcome her back enthusiastically, and a deer steps forward to present a beautifully woven basket, explaining it is a thank-you gift for the witch. She is touched, exclaiming in surprise that the lovely basket is for her. A small bird clarifies that everyone has brought thank-you gifts for Marietta. Just then, Grigio and the Great Spirit, My Love Tree, appear. Grigio notes with some surprise that they didn't expect the others to arrive first, but My Love Tree explains that in the forest, they can all move about freely as they wish. The spirit then turns to Marietta, asking if this scene makes her happy. Before she can answer, Grigio interjects, demanding to know if My Love Tree plans to live there as well. With a calm expression, the Great Spirit confirms this, stating that they are, of course, now bound by a contract. Her face lights up with pure joy. Marietta declares that she is, in fact, really happy. She muses that the place will become livelier and more fun, and she is truly glad for it. Observing her reaction, My Love Tree thinks to itself that things are proceeding just as it had predicted. In response to her happiness, My Love Tree addresses the assembled creatures. It proposes that they all sing a song of gratitude together. The animals, from the large bear to the small raccoon, agree with enthusiasm, readying themselves for a group song. And so, My Love Tree settled down to live there. Surrounded by her new spirit companion and a host of forest friends, Marietta stands contentedly outside her home, holding her basket. That day marked the moment she gained a new, and very welcome, resident. A new day begins. Fully awake, Marietta gets out of bed with a sense of purpose. She strides down the wooden hallway of her new home, her expression resolved as she brushes her hair from her face. As she passes, she glances up at the ceiling. Small, playful spirits with bulbous bodies and simple faces dangle from vines, attempting to startle her with soft cries. She simply smiles, finding their efforts endearing. One of the spirits puffs its cheeks, its playful attempt at being scary having failed. She continues on, her footsteps echoing softly, and enters a larger room. There, the Great Spirit of the forest, Taiwo, waits, its leafy head perked in greeting. Marietta wishes the My Love Tree a good morning. She announces that she is making breakfast and invites the spirit to join her in the kitchen. The spirit seems to respond with delight. In the kitchen, she begins to measure out the ingredients with a flourish of magic: flour, yeast, sugar, salt, eggs, milk, butter, and water. As she prepares to mix, the Great Spirit watches intently, cautioning her not to add too much of one component. She then presents a crisp, red apple. Thanks to the forest animals, she explains, they have an abundance of food. With this bounty, she has decided to make special forest apple pancakes. Marietta outlines her process. First, she will mix the dry ingredients: flour, yeast, sugar, and salt. In a separate bowl, she will prepare the eggs, milk, and water. Finally, she will gradually pour the wet mixture into the dry ingredients, using her stirring magic to combine them perfectly. With a simple gesture, she commands a ladle to chop the apples in midair. She explains that these will be cooked with sugar in a pot to create a caramelized forest apple syrup. The Great Spirit watches the magical display, utterly captivated. At last, the witch's pancakes are complete. A magnificent stack sits on a plate, adorned with glistening apple slices and drenched in rich, dark syrup. The Great Spirit can only gaze in awe. As Marietta looks on, a small spirit companion presents a cup of steaming liquid, warning her that the hot honey is for the Great Spirit, Taiwo. The Great Spirit happily accepts the honey. Just then, Grigio the cat appears, drawn by the delicious smell. Marietta greets him warmly, and the small spirit invites him to join them for breakfast. She takes a bite of the pancakes and closes her eyes in delight, savoring the texture, crispy on the outside, yet soft and fluffy inside. Both Grigio and the Great Spirit agree that the meal is absolutely wonderful, praising the combination of the sweet and sour forest apples, rich caramel sauce, and hot honey. After enjoying the taste, her eyes sparkle with a new idea. She announces with excitement that after they finish eating, they're going to start working on that thing. Outside the cottage, the sun shines brightly, promising a perfect day for outdoor work. Standing in the clearing, Marietta explains that the sunny weather makes it a perfect day for farming. She reveals special seeds for forest vegetables, noting that while small, they are rich in nutrients and contain far more magical energy than regular vegetables. She thanks her companions for their constant hard work. She elaborates that the most important thing for growing these vegetables is to saturate the soil with magical energy. With determination, she lifts a heavy hoe to begin plowing. However, the effort proves too much. Her hands tremble as she realizes how hard the task is, her initial confidence wavering. Seeing her struggle, the Great Spirit confidently offers to take over the task. Marietta, concerned, asks if it's sure, but the spirit simply tells her to leave it to him. Relieved and grateful, she happily agrees. She decides that, while the spirit handles the plowing, she will take care of pulling weeds and clearing stones from the area. With a single, powerful motion, the Great Spirit drives the hoe deep into the earth, effortlessly tilling the soil. As Grigio naps nearby, Marietta watches in utter amazement, her mouth agape at the spirit's incredible strength. With the field plowed, she asks what comes next. Marietta explains their next step is to sprinkle magic stone powder, which she reveals in her hand. The powder, produced by grinding magic stones, is a beautiful, sparkling substance that serves as fertilizer for the special forest vegetables. She then begins to carefully sprinkle the powder evenly across the tilled earth, announcing that she will follow it with a soil maturation spell. As she casts the spell, Marietta levitates above a large, glowing magic circle. Chanting the incantation, she commands the soil to deepen and mature, infusing the entire plot with magical energy that sparkles in the air. After the spell concludes, she gently touches the ground, feeling the transformed earth beneath her fingertips. Delighted, she declares the spell a success. The soil has become moist, rich, and filled with magical energy. With Mylov cheering beside her, Marietta announces that the next step is to create planting rows and sow the seeds. Moments later, Grigio arrives to find the planting rows are already complete. He stares in amazement, calling out to Marietta and exclaiming how incredible their work is. His praise is met with a cheerful observation from Marietta, who points out that Mylov is now completely covered in mud. The spirit creature looks down at itself in confusion. She laughs, reassuring him that it's fine, as the mud is just a sign of hard work. With a quick purification spell, she cleans him instantly. Marietta expresses her excitement, noting that this is fun and that if all goes well, they'll be eating their harvest in about a month. Feeling famished from the day's labor, Marietta decides to make lunch. She details her plan to make meatball soup, explaining how she'll season minced pork, mix it with prepared vegetable stems and carrots, form them into balls, and fry them before adding them to a simmering soup. As she gathers the ingredients, however, she realizes they don't have any carrot stems, which she notes are important for their crunchy texture. Overhearing the dilemma, Mylov confidently steps forward, telling Marietta to leave it to him. She presents the finished meal, inviting everyone to eat. With bowls of meatballs set before them, Grigio looks on with delight, exclaiming how delicious it all appears. Taking a bite, she savors the flavor, remarking on how rich and juicy the meatball is. She notes that the crunchy texture is especially amazing, declaring such an ingredient to be truly indispensable. The source of that crunch becomes suddenly clear as Grigio, having sampled a piece, lunges at Mylov, proclaiming the spirit's leaves to be unbelievably delicious. As Mylov cries out, Marietta looks on in shock, realizing a leaf is missing from his head and scolding Grigio for being unsanitary. Grigio, however, is unconcerned, simply repeating that Mylov's leaves are delicious. The spirit himself confirms this, explaining that his leaves are not only sweet and crispy, but also full of magical energy that gives strength to whoever eats them. Hearing this, Marietta clarifies that she had simply used one of his leaves as a crunchy green for the meatballs. Mylov generously offers another, but she expresses concern about whether it's dangerous for him. The spirit reassures her that a new leaf will grow back by tomorrow, though she remains a little worried. Gazing out at the newly prepared garden plot, Marietta sighs with contentment. She declares how excited she is and that she can't wait for all the vegetables to grow, a sentiment her companions seem to share. As if on cue, the sky darkens and a gentle rain begins to fall, pattering softly on the leaves and the earth. Looking out at the downpour, Marietta remarks that it is the perfect day for farming. She holds up a pouch of seeds, explaining they were a gift from the forest animals. These seeds, she elaborates, will grow into small, but nutrient-rich vegetables that contain far more magical energy than regular ones. Moved by her gratitude for their hard work, Mylov begins to cry. As rain falls outside, Marietta sits by the window with Grigio. The familiar notes that even she must get tired of the rain sometimes, recalling how she used to praise it endlessly. Marietta clarifies that while she loves the atmosphere, she would get bored if it rained every single day. She explains that she isn't blindly optimistic, reminding him of a recent chaotic time when the farm nearly flooded, forcing them to use magic to drain the water. Hearing this, Grigio looks down and apologizes for his assumption. Gazing out at the relentless downpour, Marietta observes that this is certainly the rainy season. She reflects that if the rain persists for 5 days, it ceases to be a blessing and becomes a disaster. Her thoughts then turn to the city, and she wonders if something has happened there. A flicker of concern crosses her face as she realizes she hasn't seen Lord D in a while and worries if he is doing all right. Bringing her focus back to the present, Grigio speculates that things must be difficult in the city as well due to the heavy rain. Marietta agrees, acknowledging that every year there is a period of frequent, heavy rainfall there. This realization galvanizes her into action. Marietta stands and declares she will go to the city. Grigio is shocked, questioning her decision and reminding her of the danger should her identity as the outcast which be discovered. He insists she has no business with city affairs. Her expression softens with empathy. She explains that she understands the hard work of farming and imagines the heartbreak the townsfolk would feel if the rain washed away their crops. She wants to help everyone, but Grigio points out the practical problem. How would she even reach the city in such a downpour? In response to his question, the small spirit of the Mylov tree appears before them. It confidently announces that they can leave the matter to it. The spirit offers to use teleportation magic to send Marietta to the city. Grigio leaps in shock, questioning if it's serious. Marietta, however, confirms her resolve. As she asks the spirit to take her, Grigio pleads for her to wait, but his protest is ignored. She turns to Grigio, her expression earnest, and states that she wants to help as many people in pain as she can. Seeing her unwavering determination, he relents, telling her to do as she wishes. Touched, Marietta softly speaks his name. She stood ready, declaring that she had cast a water-repelling spell on her dress and cloak. With a determined smile, she announced it was time to go. Her thoughts, however, turned to Grigio. She knew he was worried about her, and resolved that when she returned, she would apologize properly so they could make up. The spirit of the tree, sensing the tension, asked if she had fought with him. Marietta then considered what she needed to bring: food, a firestone, a hand warmer, but lamented that carrying such heavy things might be too difficult. In response to her predicament, Grigio appeared, holding out a satchel. He told her to take it. Examining the bag, Marietta noticed an inscription and realized it was a magic bag. She marveled at the gift, exclaiming that its capacity was limitless. With this amazing bag, she could now carry anything she needed. His voice cut through her excitement. He called her name, indicating he had something else for her as well. He presented her with a long object, which materialized before her in a shower of magical light. A proper magic wand. She accepted the item, feeling magic flow through her the moment she held it. It fit perfectly in her hand, as if made just for her. Grigio explained that these things were left behind by the witch, and since no one owned them anymore, she was free to use them, adding that the wand was much better than a cooking ladle. Touched by his gesture, Marietta thanked him. Grigio tried to maintain his gruff exterior, questioning her kindness to strangers, but she simply expressed concern for him in the cold rain. As he looked away, flustered, he quietly told her to wait for him to come back. She then gently held the cat, entrusting him with the protection of the precious house. With a final farewell, she stepped into the glowing circle and vanished. Left alone, Grigio watched her depart, whispering her name into the empty air. Far from the quiet forest, Grigio's parting wish for a safe return echoes as Marietta materializes in a downpour. She pulls her hood tighter, observing her surroundings. The rain is far worse than she had imagined. With the small spirit Mylov tree floating beside her, she confirms their arrival in the city. As she takes in the grim scene, shouts for help cut through the rain. Looking over, she sees a woman collapsed on the wet ground. Marietta's resolve hardens. She cannot simply ignore someone in trouble. Deciding to investigate, she tells Mylov tree that they should get closer. She approaches the fallen figure, her voice gentle as she asks if the woman is all right and if she can stand. The woman, looking utterly exhausted and soaked, weakly manages a word of thanks, her eyes barely open. Her gaze then focuses on Marietta's face, and a flicker of recognition turns to shock. With a trembling hand, she points, her voice filled with disbelief as she identifies Marietta as a witch. The accusation hangs in the air for a moment before the woman lets out a piercing scream, her face contorted in terror and rage as she brands Marietta a cursed witch. Stunned by the sudden hostility, Marietta can only stare as the woman furiously insists that the devastating rain is her fault. She tries to deny it, asserting that it's not true, but her words are drowned out by the storm and the woman's rising anger. The woman's accusations escalate as she reveals her personal tragedy, Her husband had gone to check the flood, only to be swept away by the river. She points directly at Marietta, her voice breaking with grief as she declares her the one who caused it all. Alarmed, Mylov Tree floats between them, pleading for them to stop fighting. Overwhelmed by the raw anguish in the woman's voice, Marietta flinches back. The woman screams at her to stop the rain and bring back her husband. Mylov Tree cries out, warning the woman to stay back. The tense standoff is broken by the arrival of a man on horseback, who sternly demands to know what is happening. The distraught woman looks up with a glimmer of hope, recognizing him as Lord D. Marietta, caught off guard, turns to face the newcomer. His attention fixes solely on Marietta. As a hand reaches toward her, a voice rings out, identifying her as the Witch of the Night Mist Forest, the one who caused the heavy rain, and gives the order to capture her immediately. Her accuser, desperate, turned her attention to the nobleman in their midst, crying out to his grace as rain streamed down his impassive face. This plea ignited the crowd. Murmurs of disbelief. A witch? Is it really her? Quickly turned to furious certainty. They identified her as the Witch of the Night Mist Forest, blaming her for the torrential rain, which they called her curse. Accusations flew. Are you planning to bring disasters again? Why did you come here? How dare you show your face? The collective anger swelled into a single, unified command. Seize her. The woman then pointed directly at the cloaked figure, imploring Lord Didi to act quickly and arrest the vile witch. The crowd echoed her sentiment, their shouts to catch her, filling the air. In response to the overwhelming pressure, Sir D's expression hardened, his gaze becoming resolute. The mob roared its final judgment, declaring that they could never forgive her. In the pouring rain, panic grips a crowd of townspeople. They blame a cursed witch for the deluge and the deaths it has caused. Amidst the chaos, a hooded Marietta looks on in distress as someone points directly at her, shouting for the witch to be captured. She recalls Grigio mentioning the governor and realizes the crowd must be referring to Lord D. The thought fills her with dread. She cannot allow herself to be arrested here, not by him. Nearby, Lord D confronts the agitated citizens, his voice cutting through the noise. He silences them, stating that his investigation found no trace of magic in the rain. It is merely a natural disaster. He insists the witch has nothing to do with it, though the crowd remains skeptical. He shifts his focus from the argument to the immediate danger, ordering his men to evacuate the residence. In the ensuing chaos, he spots Marietta being pushed by the crowd. He rushes to her side, helping her to her feet and asking if she's all right. He explains the dire situation. The river is on the verge of overflowing, placing the entire city in danger, and some people have already been swept away. He urges her to leave the dangerous area. When she asks why he is there, he admits he was worried about the fields flooding and came to see if he could offer any help. Hearing his concern, Marietta's expression hardens with resolve. She declares that she will stop the river flood with magic, explaining that she knows water control spells and, furthermore, that Mylov is with her. As if summoned by her words, a small, glowing spirit materializes beside her, introducing itself as Mylov. Lord D stares, stunned, asking what the creature is. Marietta explains she has a contract with the spirit, a revelation that shocks Lord D, who thought spirits were only fairy tales. She then tells him to evacuate while she handles the flood. She insists on going, but Lord D calls her plan reckless. He argues that if she isn't completely confident, she shouldn't take such a risk, and declares he will go alone. Marietta counters that she is confident and will be fine, but he remains firm. She stops him, asking him to wait. She reveals a pouch of magic stones for heating and cooking, noting that supplies have been cut off by the rain. She asks if he could distribute them to the townspeople, and he expresses his immense gratitude, realizing how helpful they would be. Thanking her for waiting, Lord D prepares to depart. But Marietta stops him once more, urgently asking him to guide her to the river now. With a look of grim determination, she stresses that if the river overflows, the city will be flooded in an instant. She rides swiftly with Lord D, who looks upon the devastation with grim regret. He laments that the floodwaters have already swept away 15 townspeople, a tragedy he feels could have been prevented if they had only warned everyone sooner. In response to his despair, she turns to him with unwavering resolve, telling him not to worry and promising she will succeed in casting the spell. Seeing her determination, Lord D simply places his faith in her, stating, "I believe in you." They soon arrive at the riverbank, where the true scale of the disaster is laid bare. A colossal, churning torrent of water rages before her, a terrifying display of nature's power. Staring at the deluge, she is momentarily stunned. The Great Spirit confirms her fears, noting that the volume of water is far greater than expected. Marietta's initial plan was to evaporate the flood, but she now realizes that such an act would consume all of her magic power, a potentially fatal amount. Her grim calculation is interrupted when Lord D calls her name. Noticing her bag, he asks if it is in her way, offering to hang it on the horse's saddle. Even as he speaks, she internally weighs her options, thinking that while saving so many people would be worth it, she would certainly die from magic depletion. His question sparks a sudden realization. Her eyes widen with newfound hope as she looks at the very bag he mentioned. A brilliant idea strikes her, she can transfer the river water directly into the bag. She excitedly points to the bag. As Lord D looks on, confused, the Great Spirit explains that it is a magic bag, specially enchanted to store a huge amount of items inside. With renewed confidence, she lays out the new plan for Lord D. She will use her magic to draw the floodwaters into the enchanted bag. The Great Spirit, Mylov, chimes in, promising to help. Though uncertain if it will work, Lord D agrees they must try. The Great Spirit thanks Lord D for his trust. Marietta then clarifies that while this method will still consume a lot of her magic power, it crucially will not cost her life. With the plan set, she raises her staff to begin. The Great Spirit, Mylov, confirms that it has secured the bag properly. Marietta asks if Mylov is ready, and the spirit gives a determined yes, vowing to do its best. She turns to Lord D, instructing him to watch from a safe distance and to flee immediately if anything goes wrong. He confirms that is his intention. Marietta then addresses the spirit Mylov, telling it to focus on its magic and not to worry about her. Lord D interjects, promising to grab her and escape if he senses danger, but Marietta firmly refutes him, stating that he will not. With the final arrangements made, she stands alone upon a rocky outcrop overlooking the churning river. Raising her staff, its crystalline top beginning to glow, she begins her incantation, calling out to the waters. In response to her command, a massive torrent of water surges from the river, bending to her will and arcing through the air directly toward her. The water swirls into a massive vortex around her, drawn to the point of her staff. With the flow established, she cries out for Mylov to begin its part of the plan. The spirit Mylov answers the call, positioning the enchanted bag and confidently declaring that it will handle directing the flow from here. As she commands the deluge, the water funnels towards the bag. However, the sheer volume causes the container to strain violently, and even the great spirit Mylov cries out under the immense pressure. A wave of realization hits her. Gritting her teeth, she understands with dawning horror that her power is not enough to control this. Her struggle is not lost on Lord D, who watches with a grim expression, realizing she cannot control this much water on her own. Marietta's strained voice calls out to the waters once more, her control slipping. Despite the overwhelming force, she continues to command the vortex, pulling the raging river toward the glowing tip of her staff with every ounce of her strength. The physical toll becomes unbearable. She cries out as sharp pain shoots through her, admitting that her hands have reached their limit. Just as her grip begins to fail, Lord D's hand firmly covers her own on the staff, lending his support. He held firm, his hand covering hers on the staff. Marietta, startled by his sudden intervention, demanded to know what he was doing. She insisted he let go immediately, warning him of the extreme danger of interfering with magic. He reassured her, telling her not to worry about him and to focus solely on her magic, promising to keep holding on until she was done. As the floodwaters began to flow obediently toward the magical bag, the great spirit Mylov let out a powerful cry, urging the spell forward. With their combined effort, the river's raging flow finally calmed. Lord D looked at Marietta, telling her it was all thanks to her. But just as he spoke, she cried out, stumbling against him. He caught her, asking what was wrong as she gasped that it hurt, her magic power completely depleted. As she faltered, the great spirit Mylov rushed to her side, urging her to hang on. It offered her one of its own leaves, telling her to eat it. Marietta, dazed and in pain, could only look up in confusion. She took the leaf and ate it. A moment later, a look of relief washed over her face. She thanked Mylov, remarking that she felt better and that the effect was like magic. With the flood now under control, she declared her intention to stop the rain as well, much to Lord D's surprise. As she spoke, the great spirit began to softly chant. In response to its call, dozens of smaller, similar spirits materialized around them, all joining in the strange, melodic chant. Lord D watched in amazement, realizing he was witnessing the language of the spirits. At the center of a glowing, magical sigil that had formed on the ground, the great spirit Mylov directed the chorus. A single, pure note ascended from it, piercing the heavy, rain-filled clouds. Almost instantly, the downpour ceased and the sky cleared, revealing patches of blue. Marietta stared in disbelief, and Lord D murmured that he couldn't believe it. He understood, then, that it was because Marietta had successfully stopped the flood that Mylov was able to stop the rain. Overwhelmed with gratitude, Marietta thanked the spirit, calling it truly amazing. Her face lit up with a brilliant, joyous smile. She corrected herself, declaring that it meant they were all amazing for what they had accomplished together. As she celebrated, Lord D watched her, his expression softening into one of quiet contemplation. He looks down, expressing his profound gratitude for her actions in saving the townspeople. Marietta, flustered, insists he doesn't need to thank her, but he gently tells her he can't thank her enough. Seeing her expression, he calls her name to get her attention. He reassures her not to worry, promising that he will make it clear to everyone that the devastating rain was not her fault. Her eyes widen in surprise at his declaration. After a moment, her expression softens, and she quietly agrees. Sometime later, Back at her home, she joyfully calls out to her familiar, Grigio, announcing that she has returned. She also happily points out that the great spirit Mylov has come back with her. The cat warmly welcomes her home. She pulls Grigio into a tight embrace, apologizing for causing him to worry. The cat, flustered, turns his head away and insists that he wasn't worried about her in the slightest. As they embrace, the small spirit Mylov cries out for them to look. Following its gaze, Marietta looks up at the sky and sees a brilliant rainbow arching across it, marveling at how beautiful it is. The beautiful sight, however, triggers a painful memory. Her smile fades as she recalls the furious, hateful shouts directed at her. "You evil witch." She realizes with a chilling clarity that for the first time, she had experienced pure, unadulterated hatred from someone aimed at her identity as a witch. The experience was truly terrifying. On the day the town's reconstruction was completed after a month of heavy rain, Lord D addressed the populace. He declared that Marietta was the one who had stopped the river's flood and saved them all. However, a man in the crowd shouted for the others not to be deceived, accusing her of being the witch who covered the land in fog, a fact he claimed could not be denied. The crowd's hostility grew as one man lunged forward, screaming for Marietta to get out. Others joined in, demanding to know what she was planning by creating the fog. Marietta could only stare, shocked and speechless. As the townspeople's cries of "Wicked witch" and "Get out of our town" intensified, Lord D commanded silence. With a swift movement, he stepped in front of Marietta, drawing his sword to deflect a projectile thrown from the crowd, shielding her from their anger. He told Marietta they should leave. The crowd erupted in confusion and anger, questioning why Lord D was siding with the witch. As they continued to shout for her to get out, another stone flew through the air. Tears welled in Marietta's eyes, her expression a mixture of shock and sorrow. Sometime later, in the quiet of a private room, Marietta offered Lord D tea or juice. He sat opposite her, politely declining the gesture, stating that there was no need for such formalities. He covered his face with his hand, expressing his disbelief that things had escalated so far, especially since she was the one who saved the town. Marietta looked down, her voice soft as she offered a deep apology for how things had transpired. She then looked at him directly, asking if he remembered the question he had posed when they first met. He confirmed that he did. She reminded him that he had intended to watch her to determine whether or not she was an evil witch. With a hopeful expression, Marietta asked if she could conclude that he had judged her not to be an evil witch. Lord D affirmed her conclusion without hesitation, stating it was certain she was not a witch who harmed the townspeople. A brilliant, relieved smile lit up Marietta's face as she thanked him. Her smile softened into a more somber expression. She conceded that while he might believe her, it was likely too difficult for everyone else to accept. She reflected on her past naivete, how she used to believe that showing sincerity would one day earn her forgiveness. She felt it was only natural to bear the original witch's sins, as this new body had granted her freedom and the joy of using magic. Looking down, Marietta spoke his name, then admitted that she had been naive. She now understood that the sin she committed could not be erased, and that the hearts of those who had suffered would never be completely healed. She reflects on the town's hostility, realizing that the truly frightening thing is not their desire for her punishment, but the question of why Lord D continues to side with the witch. The thought leaves her in silent contemplation. Despite her inner turmoil, she turns to Lord D, stating she has something to give him. When he asks what it is, she presents a piece of paper, explaining that it is a magic letter. When he writes on it, it will instantly fly to her. She continues, her gaze earnest, declaring her desire to help him and protect the town. She urges him to use the letter if he or the townspeople are ever in danger, promising she will come right away. He accepts the letter, his expression somber. He thanks her by name, but his voice trails off as if he has more to say, a sense of incompletion hanging in the air. Before he can continue, Marietta forces a smile and suggests that it would be best if this were their last face-to-face meeting. Lord D is stunned into silence, questioning her sudden declaration. She does not answer his question. Instead, she bids him farewell and begins to dematerialize in a swirl of magical light. Lord D desperately calls out her name, reaching for her, but she vanishes before he can stop her. He is left alone in the room, the fading motes of light the only evidence she was ever there. He whispers her name into the sudden emptiness. Meanwhile, at her secluded home, her familiar, Grigio, waits. Marietta reappears at her cottage. Grigio greets her with a stretch, welcoming her back and casually asking how things went in the town. She offers no reply. Instead, she collapses to the floor, her body trembling as she curls into a ball, overcome with silent sorrow. Her familiar watches as she internally reasons that her decision to stay away from Lord D was correct, as it protects him from the town's displeasure. Despite this logic, she clutches her chest, wondering why her heart aches so profoundly. Her familiars watched with growing concern. Grigio, the gray cat, stared intently, quietly wondering if Marietta was suffering from stomachache. They had been observing her like this for a whole month. The small spirit of the Mylov tree noted that no matter how much they asked, she would only insist she was fine. It was clear to them all that Marietta was once again lost in thought. Her distraction was evident in her current task, pulling the vast number of weeds in a garden by hand. Grigio pointed out that using magic would be much faster, as she would be working until evening at this rate. Marietta offered only a quiet, simple agreement. He pressed further, asking what she had been doing all this time. The question struck a chord with Marietta. She recalled the terror of her magic running out, a fear that had since grown into a constant dread. The possibility that one day her strength might vanish completely, leaving her unable to ever use magic again. Because of this fear, she explained that she must learn to live on her own, relying on magic as little as possible. She admitted, however, that she still found herself needing its help sometimes. Grigio could only listen, murmuring her name in concern. She apologized for her recent clumsiness. Her familiars suddenly understood. Her distraction was the reason the breakfast egg was burned that morning, and why the floor had been left completely wet from a spill. Despite these setbacks, Marietta clenched her fist, resolving that she must try harder. Seeing her distress, Grigio and the Mylov tree spirit immediately offered their comfort, reminding her that they will always be there to support her and that it doesn't matter how she lives as long as she finds joy. The two familiars continued their discussion. Grigio noted that while he doesn't mind slightly burnt food, it isn't good for Marietta's health. The Mylov tree spirit agreed, admitting its own worry for her. From a background, Marietta promised to be more careful. Later, she tackled the laundry, scrubbing clothes by hand in a wooden tub. As she worked, a sudden sting from the water caused her to cry out softly. She pulled her hands from the water, examining them with a sigh. Her hands, once beautiful, were now covered in small cuts. She made a mental note to apply ointment later, but then a new thought surfaced. She wondered if the hands of the laundress from her past life looked like this, too. She reflects on her departure, realizing it has been over a month since she left without a word. A worry surfaces that Lord D might now be angry with her for her abrupt disappearance. Despite the many difficulties she faces in her new life, she finds that the daily chores are much harder than she ever imagined. She often fails at simple tasks like cooking and cleaning, turning the room into a mess, and everything takes an incredibly long time. These busy days, however, help her forget her worries. Yet, sometimes, when she remembers Lord D, she feels a distinct sting in her chest. While hanging laundry, she muses on her loneliness. She was the one who declared she would never see Lord D again, yet she feels this strange ache. As she questions the feeling, a familiar voice suddenly calls out her name, Marietta. Startled, she turns to see Lord D standing before her. He looks at her with a calm expression and greets her, noting that it has been a while. His confirmation that it is truly him sends Marietta into a panic. She tearfully exclaims his name, questioning why he is there and if something has happened in the town. She frantically asks why he didn't use the magic letter. He gently urges her to calm down, reassuring her that the town is perfectly fine. As she stares at him, still reeling from the shock, he states his purpose with simple clarity, I came to see you. His words render her speechless. The thought that he came all this way, just for her, causes a deep blush to spread across her face. He adds that he is glad to see she is safe and in good health. He then explains his actions over the past month and a half. Since the day she left, he has been consumed with thoughts of why she did it. In response, he has been holding meetings with the townspeople, trying to make them understand who she truly is. Overwhelmed by his dedication, Marietta begins to apologize, feeling she was of no help to him. He quickly stops her, insisting she not apologize and assuring her that what she has already done for him is more than enough. He gently takes her hand, his expression turning serious as he addresses her. He asks what happened to her hands, noting they weren't so rough before. Marietta flinches, pulling away in surprise. She explains that she was trying to live without relying on magic, but failed at many things, which is how her hands ended up this way. With a self-deprecating smile, she asks if they look awful, but he immediately insists they don't look awful in the slightest. He muses that if he were living alone, he would probably be in an even worse and messier state. His comment brings a small laugh from Marietta, who says she can't imagine Lord D struggling with housework. Seeing her expression soften, he remarks with relief that she has finally smiled. Feeling more at ease, Marietta decides to introduce her companions. She presents the small, plant-like Mylov tree and the cat fairy, Grigio. Lord D greets the Mylov tree, acknowledging that they have met before. Grigio, however, is less than thrilled, internally questioning why the knight has returned. Marietta formally introduces Grigio as her dearest friend, and Lord D politely acknowledges the introduction. Grigio remains wary, though Marietta insists it's all right. Marietta invites him inside, and he accepts. She then apologizes for the suddenness of it all, but he tells her there's no need. She frets that she can't serve him burnt cookies, lamenting that they're completely charred, but he reassures her it's fine because she made them herself. He tells her he is so happy that he wishes he could keep talking with her forever. Flustered but pleased, Marietta admits she is also really happy. His expression softens, glad to hear her say it. As he prepares to leave, he asks if his sudden visit was a bother. Marietta begins to say that she knows it would be better if they didn't see each other, but trails off. He promises to visit again, and she agrees. Once he is gone, Grigio asks her what she intends to do. Her heart pounds in her chest. With a deep blush spreading across her face, she clutches her hands together and comes to a stunning realization. She is in love with Lord D. A sudden, overwhelming realization strikes the witch, her face flushing as she clutches her cheeks. It seems she has truly fallen in love with Lord D. Overwhelmed, she turns to her familiar, crying out and asking what she should do. Her frantic cry startles her companions. Grigio, however, remains composed, suggesting that if she believes it to be love, then it likely is. The witch stammers, taken aback by the simple confirmation of such a powerful new feeling. The emotional flood proves too much, and she collapses onto a nearby bench, burying her face in her hands. Grigio looks on with concern, asking if she is truly all right. Lying there, she tries to process this sensation, a feeling she has never known, one unrecorded in any magic book. Her heart beats fast, her chest tightens, and she feels a strange mix of happiness and pain. She concludes this must be love and finds herself wondering what Lord D feels for her. She sits up as Grigio makes an observation, calling her a mysterious witch of unknown origin who is always hiding her face beneath her hood. The witch can only agree, acknowledging that it is true. His words spark a thought. She realizes that whenever she meets someone, she unconsciously pulls her hood up. She wonders if it's a habit belonging to the body's original owner, as if the vessel itself remembers a past instinct. With a flicker of determination, she pulls the hood back, revealing her face completely. A question hangs in her mind. Can she really show him her face? Her thoughts drift to the original Marietta's life in the tower. She recalls that all the mirrors in the princess's room had been covered, confirming a suspicion. A vision of the past emerges, the original Marietta staring at her own reflection. The princess notes her striking resemblance to the Witch of the Night Mist, lamenting that they would be almost identical if it weren't for a scar on her own face. The memory continues, with the princess expressing her desire to hide the scar from everyone. The witch connects the pieces. The original Marietta covered the mirrors because of her scar. This leads to a new theory. Perhaps the legendary, which she resembles, was also hiding a scar. She worries about what Lord D would think if he were to see her scar, wishing she could hide the ugly wound with makeup. Having been too busy with matters of the city, she decides it's time to focus on herself. A new resolve forms. She will consult her magic books and create her own cosmetics. This realization strikes her with force. The simple, overwhelming desire to look beautiful in the eyes of the one she loves. She wonders if this is the power of love. From a nearby balcony, her two familiars observe this change. Grigio notes with a smile that Marietta's energy seems to have returned, while the smaller familiar squirms, finding the whole display rather embarrassing. Later, in the forest, the witch, now in her traditional black robes, explains her mission to Grigio. The ingredients for her cosmetics are a mineral called cerisite, natural pigments, pearl powder, zinc oxide, and silver-colored minakite. She used pendulum magic to discover that all of them are located within this forest. When Grigio questions her early start, she dismisses it, telling him she's just taking a walk while he helps search. As they walk, they are greeted enthusiastically by the Squirrel Brothers. The witch returns their morning pleasantries and explains that they are out so early to look for ingredients to make cosmetics. The squirrels immediately offer their help. The older brother mentions that the beautiful white paint on their house is made from cerisite. Upon hearing this, the witch realizes the connection. The squirrels offer to help them find some. Without hesitation, the larger squirrel brother sinks his teeth into a nearby rock formation with a loud clang, breaking off a sizable chunk as the small imp familiar looks on in wide-eyed astonishment. He proudly presents the large, shimmering piece of cerisite, asking if the amount is sufficient. The witch is overjoyed, confirming it's perfect and thanking them profusely for their help. With the first ingredient secured, the witch considers what's next. She muses that the shiny, silver-colored ingredient must be nearby. Just as Grigio asks for the next step, a voice calls out, identifying her as the Morning Mist Witch. She turns in surprise to find two deer-like spirits, one large and one small, regarding her with familiarity. The larger one speaks, remarking that it has been a while since they last saw her. She greeted the two deer spirits warmly, thanking them for their help. Her familiar watched from her shoulder as the larger deer explained that there was no need for thanks. She had, after all, saved the younger one by healing its injured horns in the past. In response, she explained that they were gathering ingredients to make cosmetics. Having overheard them talking about a shiny silver color, the deer spirit confirmed it knew where to find such a thing and offered to lead her there. Thanks to their guidance, and with the help of other forest animals who eagerly joined in, she finally gathered all the ingredients. Marietta was overwhelmed with gratitude for the kindness shown by everyone in the forest. She held a gift of soft wool from a white sheep, realizing that everyone had helped because she always helps them first. With her materials assembled, she announced that it was time to begin mixing the ingredients one by one. With focused determination, she began the magical process. A glowing ring of power formed around her as she commanded the multiple elements to unite and become one through a powerful fusion spell. The spell was a success. A tray of finished cosmetic pots and jars sat before her. She beamed with pride, explaining that because her witch magic purifies all metallic toxins, the all-natural forest cosmetics were completely safe. Her thoughts turned to the true purpose of this endeavor. She knew that using magic for the sake of beauty could enhance its power. The real question remained, could this cosmetic completely hide the scar? With resolve, she decided to try the makeup. She began the application, channeling her magic into the act. The cosmetics and her own power swirled around her in an ethereal display, all focused on the singular concept of beauty. A moment of stunned silence followed. She stared at her reflection in the mirror, her hand gently touching her face, her eyes wide with disbelief and awe. The silence broke as she whirled around, ecstatic. She called out to Grigio, joyfully proclaiming that the scar was completely gone. The cat familiar, initially confused, looked up to see her flawless face and purred in happy amazement. She gazes at her reflection, marveling at the power of her witchcraft. Her skin is smooth and radiant, making her feel as though she has returned to how she looked as a princess. The sight brings tears of joy to her eyes. Her familiar, Grigio, quickly tells her not to cry or she will ruin her makeup. Overcome with emotion, she wonders how she can ever repay everyone for their kindness. But Grigio proudly claims credit for the idea. As she expresses her gratitude to the forest animals, the great spirit Mylov appears holding carrots and proposes they hold a harvest festival to celebrate. Marietta is taken by surprise at the suggestion. The cat familiar seems unimpressed, but Marietta is ecstatic, calling Mylov a genius. The spirit adds that Marietta looks truly beautiful, and she enthusiastically agrees to the festival. With the plan set, Mylov then asks Marietta what she thinks about inviting that night to the celebration, causing her to freeze in place. Grigio clarifies who Mylov is referring to, and a shocked Marietta realizes they mean for her to invite Lord D. She stammers, questioning why they are suddenly bringing him up. She protests that he is always busy with his duties as governor, but Grigio presses on, asking directly if she doesn't love him. Flustered, Marietta admits that she does. The familiar calls her a complicated girl and tells her to just try and invite him anyway. Marietta looks downcast, worrying aloud that she will be incredibly sad if he refuses. Resigned, she considers that since Lord D is so busy, his reply will likely take a while. Her heart pounds in anticipation of sending the invitation. But just as she thinks this, a letter materializes before her in a flash of light. Shocked by the speed of the reply, she opens it to find that Lord D has accepted. He will attend. Overjoyed, she exclaims how wonderful it is. She clutches the letter to her chest, a soft, happy giggle escaping her lips as a blush spreads across her face. Overjoyed by the swift reply, she whispers a quiet yes to herself. Her elation, however, is momentarily tempered by a sudden realization. Looking at her hand, she remembers the scars that cover her body. A new determination fills her. She decides she must also take care of herself and announces her plan to gather ingredients for soap. Watching from nearby railing, her small familiar notes how happy she looks, while Grigio, the gray cat, adds that this determined spirit is the Marietta they are used to seeing. Clutching the letter once more, her expression hardens with resolve. She thinks of her upcoming reunion, determined that the next time she sees him, she will present her most beautiful self. Unbeknownst to her, Lord D holds her invitation, sharing the very same sentiment. As Marietta finishes preparing a large meal, her familiar, Grigio, approaches. He asks if she's still not done with her preparations. Marietta confirms she has finished making plenty of food, but Grigio clarifies that he is not referring to the meal. In response, she pulls back her hood, revealing that she has put her hair up for the occasion. Touching her cheek, she adds that she also carefully covered her scars with makeup. She then beams with a bright smile, asking if she isn't pretty. Grigio, surprised, remarks that he had never noticed before since her face was always hidden. He suggests she at least take off her hood, but then questions her all-black attire. Marietta simply states that she has no other clothes. Her confidence suddenly wavers, her face flushing as a new thought strikes her. She realizes that the idea of showing her face to Lord D feels a bit embarrassing. She clutches the front of her robe, admitting that the feeling is completely new to her and she doesn't know how to act. Grigio, putting the pieces together, asks if she prepared herself so carefully just for the night. Marietta hesitantly confirms that she did. Her confession leads Grigio to a quiet realization. This must be love. He then asks Marietta directly how she envisions her future with the knight, specifying that he means their relationship. Her demeanor instantly shifts to one of pure joy. Cupping her blushing face, she exclaims that just seeing and talking to Lord D is more than enough for her. Grigio presses, asking if she will still be satisfied with only that in the future. She gives an enthusiastic yes. His question makes her pause. Her happy expression fades as she considers it, finally admitting that she doesn't believe her social standing would even permit her to appear in public with Lord D. As she explains her reasoning, a vision of herself and the nobleman as silhouettes in a formal setting appears. She elaborates that for the upper class, everything is dictated by social rank. Not just marriage, but even friendships and simple acquaintances must be between families of equal status. She continues to ponder why the knight, Lord D, visits her so frequently. As she contemplates, her small familiar, perched atop Grigio, explains the harsh reality of their world. For those in high society, having a relationship with someone of lower status is strictly forbidden. Grigio then speculates that perhaps Lord D seeks a connection with a witch for a specific purpose. He muses about potions that make someone fall in love or elixirs for hair growth, noting that witches possess knowledge that ordinary magicians cannot reach. The small familiar agrees, stating that witches are as honest as ever in their dealings. Hearing this, Marietta, in her small form, concedes that their assessment feels emotionally complicated, but she admits that she would help him if she could. Her small familiar then poses a direct question. It asks if she would create a potion to make Lord D loved by women if he requested it. Marietta falls silent for a moment before her expression hardens. She states that even if she wanted a relationship with him, at best, she could only ever be his mistress. The thought is clearly abhorrent to her. Clutching her hands to her chest, she firmly declares that she does not want that fate. She explains that becoming his mistress is impossible because she couldn't bear to see Lord D criticized by society because of her. In response, Grigio challenges her directly, asking why she doesn't simply aim to become his official wife. The question catches Marietta off guard. Grigio presses further, asking if she's truly considering Lord D's feelings. Flustered, Marietta admits she doesn't even know what his feelings are yet, and it would be rude to make assumptions. Grigio scoffs at her hesitation, declaring with absolute certainty that for someone to spend so much time visiting another, they must have feelings for them. Marietta is taken aback by his confident assertion. He doubles down, betting a whole month's worth of sweets on it. Marietta retorts that she's the one who makes those sweets. Just then, her small familiar announces that everyone has gathered for the festival. Hearing the summons, Grigio announces he is on his way. Marietta, now in her full-size form and pulling up her hood, sighs at the cat's antics. She refocuses, stating that for now, they must concentrate on the Harvest Festival and treat all their guests properly. She welcomes Lord D to the Harvest Festival, thanking him for the invitation. He gazes out at the remarkable gathering of animals, a sight he has never witnessed before. Below, a pile of gifts from the forest creatures has accumulated for Marietta, who exclaims in surprise that she ended up receiving more than she gave. As she marvels at the unexpected turnout, Lord D presents her with a gift of his own. He offers her a pocket watch, simply stating that it is for her. Marietta is taken aback, noting that she was the one who invited everyone to the festival, yet she is the one receiving presents. Her surprise deepens into astonishment as she looks at the watch. She realizes with a start that he remembered a past conversation where she mentioned not owning one. He confirms this, and she examines the gift more closely, her initial shock giving way to admiration. She worries aloud about the expense, but her concern is overshadowed by the beauty of the piece. She observes that despite its age, it has been impeccably cared for, admiring the engravings of a falcon and a lion. As she gazes at the watch, Lord D gently insists. He urges her to accept it, explaining that he believes his late mother would have been happier knowing that Marietta is the one using the watch now. Touched by his words, Marietta accepts the gift with a bright smile. She thanks him profusely, promising to polish it and care for it every day. Changing the subject, she presents him with a plate of food, explaining that it's a full meal made from vegetables they grow themselves in the forest. He accepts the plate, but makes a surprising admission. He is not very fond of meat. Marietta expresses her surprise, having worried that the meatless dish wouldn't be filling enough. He quickly reassures her, stating that on the contrary, he is very grateful and that this is more than enough for him. When she asks why, he recounts a painful memory from his childhood. He explains that as a child, he was forced to go on a hunting trip where he had to kill a rabbit and butcher it on the spot. The traumatic experience left him unable to eat meat easily ever since. He clarifies that his diet now consists mostly of vegetables, with only a little fish or meat. Marietta listens, a look of understanding dawning on her face. A sudden realization strikes her, and she recalls a past meal she prepared for him. She remembers having served him stew before and begins to worry. He quickly reassures her, explaining that while he can't eat dishes with too much red meat, the stew she made was truly delicious. His reassurance turns into a heartfelt compliment. He looks at her directly, his expression sincere, and declares that all the food she makes is truly delicious and that he genuinely loves it. His earnest words leave Marietta momentarily speechless. Still reeling from their previous conversation, she looked up at Lord D and declared her earnest desire to know more about him. Not just what he likes, but what he dislikes as well. Her forwardness caught him by surprise, his expression unreadable. Across from him, Marietta waited, her own face a mixture of hope and apprehension. She flinched slightly, letting out a small sound of uncertainty. Lord D remarked that no one ever speaks to him with such directness, except for her. Seeing her begin to apologize for crossing a line, he quickly reassured her that it was fine. He then leaned in, asking her to listen, confessing that he had been wanting to tell someone his story for a very long time. Before he could continue, Grigio the cat suggested they talk inside. Marietta agreed, though the sudden suggestion startled her and her nearby animal companions. Once settled indoors with a cup of tea, Lord D took a moment to appreciate the comforting atmosphere, murmuring to himself about the warmth. He then began his story, revealing the truth of his birth. He is the son of his father's mistress. He explained that his father, a man with a strong sense of duty, raised him without discrimination, treating him the same as his legitimate brother. Despite this equal treatment, tragedy began when it became clear that D was more skilled than his brother in every endeavor. Whispers started to circulate, questioning if D was the more suitable heir. Though D insisted he had no such ambition, his brother refused to believe him. The situation escalated as his brother began spreading vile rumors about D's mother. As a mistress, she had no means to defend her reputation, and soon they were both despised and shunned. They tried to live peacefully, ignoring the gossip, until the day his mother was murdered. Marietta gasped, her hand flying to her mouth in shock. He concluded, stating with cold certainty that his mother's killers were his brother's followers. They didn't stop there. They also made several attempts on his own life, poisoning his food and even placing a venomous snake in his bed, all by his brother's command. Still processing the weight of his story, she listens as Lord D continues his explanation. He recounts how his brother, in an effort to keep him close, appointed him as the governor of one of his territories, the Valakline lands, also known as Crystallizersi, and even granted him the title of knight. This, he concludes, is how he became the ruler of that domain. Hearing this, she poses a question that has been on her mind. She asks why, on the day they met, he introduced himself with an alias instead of his real name. He clarifies that Didi was simply a nickname from his childhood and reveals his full name is Didier Valakline. He elaborates on his reasoning, his expression turning serious. At that time, the territory was under threat from the so-called evil Witch of the Night Fog Forest. He admits that had he approached her in his official capacity as governor, he would have had no choice but to kill her immediately. He continues, describing the escalating situation. Many knights have been dispatched to defeat this witch, but all were vanquished. The menace grew so potent that he began to see her in his dreams, where she appeared only to threaten his life. Driven by the constant threat to his life and the failure of his knights, he made a firm resolution. He would kill the witch in self-defense. Acting on this resolve, he entered the forest alone on a day the clouds had parted. Contrary to the rumors, he encountered no magical barriers or traps and easily reached the forest's heart. What he found there, however, was entirely unexpected. He explains that he wanted to see the truth for himself, finding it impossible to believe that a woman who mistook a squirrel for a human could be the fearsome witch of legend. As the days they spent together passed, his certainty grew. She was not the one who brought the fog to the land. His gaze fixes on her, and he asks directly, Marietta, who are you really? Where did you come from? And where's the Witch of the Night Fog Forest now? Seated across a table, Didier Valakline begins his interrogation, asking the hooded figure before him who she is and where she came from. She remains silent, a cup of tea steaming before her. As he addresses her by the name Marietta, she looks up, startled, as he presses further, demanding to know the current whereabouts of the Witch of the Night Mist Forest. A small, distressed sound escapes her lips. Didier dismisses her reaction, stating flatly that she is wrong. Playing innocent, Marietta asks what he means, addressing him as Lord D. With a cheerful smile, she playfully declares that she herself is the Witch of the Night Mist Forest. He remains unconvinced. He clearly remembers the witch from his dream, the threatening voice and the terrifying aura that surrounded her. He tells Marietta that this memory is completely different from the impression she gives. Didier explains that he felt something was off from the very beginning. Her refined behavior and gestures, he points out, are those of a lady of noble birth, not a witch unfamiliar with etiquette. He observes that she seems like a cherished girl from a loving family, and directly asks if she is not, in fact, from the nobility. His words trigger a memory for Marietta. She recalls her life as the beloved princess of the Kingdom of Snow, cherished by her father and mother, a life that lasted until she went to Zelfara. She also remembers, however, that in the dream Didier mentioned, she couldn't see the witch's face clearly. Didier kneels before her, his tone shifting. He calls her name, Marietta, and pleads for her to show him her face. He reveals a crucial detail from his dream. He saw a burned scar on the witch's forehead. As she stares back at him from beneath her hood, Didier voices his final conclusion. With conviction, he states that she is probably not the Witch of the Night Mist Forest. His accusation hits its mark. Marietta flinches, and her hand slowly rises, reaching for the edge of her hood, as if to finally reveal the face hidden beneath. Didier watches her hand intently, his gaze fixed and unwavering, waiting for the truth to be unveiled. He watched as her hand trembled near the edge of her hood, a soft, distressed sound escaping her lips. Seeing her distress, he relented. His gaze dropped, and he apologized, assuring her that he would not force her to do anything. His sudden change in demeanor caught her off guard. She began to address him as Lord D, but the emotional weight of the moment overwhelmed her, and she broke down into tears. Even so, she resolved that she must first stand up. Before she could rise, a sudden, inexplicable gust of wind tore the hood from her head, sending her long, light hair flying free. She looked up in surprise, wondering at the source of the wind, as Didier realized with certainty that he had been right all along. He steadied her as she stumbled, his hands gently holding her arms. A look of profound relief washed over his face as he declared that she truly wasn't the witch of the night mist forest, murmuring, "Thank goodness." His relief only flustered her more. She quickly refuted his conclusion, insisting that she was the witch and had merely hidden the burn mark with makeup. Pointing to her forehead, she urged him to touch it, claiming he would know it was real, even if her desperate fabrication felt hollow. Ignoring her frantic claims, he pulled her into a firm embrace. He spoke her name, Marietta, and stated with conviction that she was not the witch. He told her that he didn't want her to carry the burden of sin that was not her own. Held tightly against him, she was stunned into silence. His words echoed in her mind. No one had ever told her it was acceptable to simply be Marietta. Her entire life had been defined by titles forced upon her: a saint, a queen candidate, and a witch. The weight of this realization left her trembling in his arms. Overwhelmed, she could only manage to whisper his title, Lord D. Later, back in her room, she stared blankly, still reeling. Her familiar, Grigio, bluntly asked how she reached her current conclusion before cutting to the chase. "Have you and that night become lovers? Aren't you ready to admit it yet?" The question sent Marietta into a flustered panic. Her heart pounded with embarrassment as Grigio's voice cut through the air, asking if she and the night had been hugging. Flustered, Marietta accused her familiar of spying, calling him unfair for watching her hesitate. With a sly grin, Grigio confessed that the gust of wind was no coincidence. He had opened the window himself to orchestrate the moment. As her cheeks burned, Grigio smugly added that wind doesn't blow with such perfect timing, like something out of a romance novel. Marietta, looking at her reflection in a hand mirror, could only silently concede that he was right. Her fluster gave way to a more somber reflection. She set the mirror aside, her gaze falling to the hairbrush in her hand as she acknowledged that, thanks to that moment, she had finally come to understand Lord D's feelings toward her. But this understanding brought a painful conclusion. She stated aloud that she could not become Lord D's lover, even if he believed she wasn't the witch. From his perch, Grigio looked up in confusion, asking her why not. She turned away, the weight of her greatest secret pressing down. Marietta explained that she still hadn't told him who she truly is, Zelphra, the queen of the enemy. Grigio countered this, reminding her that the knight seemed to love her deeply regardless. Considering his words, a faint blush appeared on her cheeks. She wondered what would happen if he knew her identity, admitting that she had a feeling, a hope, that perhaps Lord D's feelings wouldn't change even if he learned the truth. That flicker of hope was immediately extinguished by overwhelming anxiety. She argued that even if their feelings were mutual, the difference in their social status was too great to overcome. The mere thought of how society would judge them, and how Lord D himself would be misjudged, terrified her. Observing her distress, Grigio sighed, remarking on what complicated creatures humans are. He noted that while it's fine for commoners to live for love, those born as nobles are expected to restrain such emotions. He flopped onto the bed, seemingly accepting her reasoning. With an air of resignation, he asked if this meant she would simply remain friends with the knight from now on, concluding that it seemed that was how things would be. A serene, yet bittersweet, smile touched Marietta's lips. She decided that as long as Lord D's future held happiness, that was enough for her. Just having their hearts connected brought her joy. Announcing that the day had been exhausting, she resolved to take a bath. Her familiar, Grigio, seems to find her resolve amusing. He flops onto his back, repeating her sentiment that just having our hearts connected is enough, with clear sarcasm before rolling over with a thud. Sometime after the harvest festival, a visitor arrives at Marietta's home. The visitor is Lord Didier, who presents her with a beautiful bouquet of roses, asking if she would accept them. Marietta, delighted, exclaims that they are beautiful. He replies that he is glad she likes them, admitting this is the first time he has ever thought of giving flowers to a woman. His unusual gesture makes Marietta wonder if he has a problem and needs her help. He confirms her suspicion, explaining that he was hoping to introduce her to his guardian and was wondering when would be a good time. She eagerly offers her assistance, promising to help with all her strength and asking if he needs magic potions. Flustered, he clarifies that he wants to introduce her as someone dear to him. He becomes so overwhelmed with embarrassment that he covers his face, letting out a shaky breath. Concerned, Marietta reaches out and gently takes his hand, asking if he is all right. He looks at her with sudden determination, clarifying his previous statement with startling directness. He declares that he wants to introduce her to his guardian as his future fiancée, leaving Marietta utterly stunned. Her shocked cry echoes from the house. Up on the roof, Grigio, who has been eavesdropping, smirks with satisfaction, remarking that this turn of events is just as he expected. Outside a building, Didier Valaclian stands with Marietta, broaching a startling subject by referring to her as his potential future wife. His words then become formal and direct. Looking at the stunned and blushing Marietta, he declares his desire for her hand in marriage. The proposal catches her completely off guard. Marietta stammers that this is the first she has heard of it. Seeing her flustered state, Didier apologizes for his abruptness. He gazes at her earnestly, simplifying his previous declaration into a heartfelt statement. Marietta, I want to marry you. The word marry hangs in the air, causing Marietta's mind to race. She recalls the intimate moment when he showed her his face and they embraced, now recontextualized by his sudden proposal. He explains his reasoning, stating that he believed their feelings had connected in that moment. He then asks Marietta directly how she feels, but she is too flustered to give a clear response, only managing to stammer. Misinterpreting her reaction as positive, Didier acknowledges his high station as a knight and noble, but smiles, saying he is happy to hear her feelings. He seems convinced she reciprocates his desire. He presses on, asking her plainly how she feels about him. The direct question only leaves Marietta more bewildered, letting out a confused "huh." Finally finding her words, Marietta explains with surprising innocence that she likes him as a friend. The clarification hits Didier with the force of a physical blow, leaving him utterly shocked and speechless. He processes her words, his voice barely a whisper as he repeats, as a friend. In response to his stunned silence, Marietta suddenly grabs his hand, her movement causing a rustle of fabric. She looks at him with wide, concerned eyes and begins to question him. He pulls her closer, their faces nearly touching, causing her heart to pound her chest. He presses his questions, asking if she gives her blessings to all her friends or showers them with her radiant smile. He leans in, adding that there is one more, most important question. His voice low, he finishes his query, asking if she allows all her friends to embrace her tightly. Her face flushes as she blurts out her answer, insisting that she would hate it if anyone other than him would do such a thing. A small sound of realization escapes her. He seizes the moment, his expression serious, and points out the contradiction. He asks if it isn't strange to call him just a friend when their actions are so exclusive, confessing that he would never permit such closeness from anyone else. Marietta struggles to find the right words, stammering before finding her resolve. She explains that the family she mentioned was actually her grandfather. To her, she clarifies, Di-sama is already family, a dear member who has done so much for her and with whom she already lives. He listens patiently before stating his own desire plainly. He tells her that, for that very reason, he could wish for nothing more than for her to officially join them. Tears stream down Marietta's face. She tells him she is happy to hear how he truly feels, but that she cannot accept. With a pained expression, she apologizes. He looks on, perplexed by her refusal. He questions if her hesitation is due to the difference in their social standing. He quickly reassures her that his grandfather would never oppose their union just because she is a witch, still not grasping the true nature of her feelings. He continues to probe for her reasons, dismissing his earlier guesses, and now musing that it must be a pity she is the queen of an enemy kingdom. Clutching the bouquet he gave her, Marietta looks up at him, her breath catching in her throat. He then adopts a theatrical, sorrowful pose, lamenting how tragic it is that someone has fallen for him, but continues to reject him. Flustered and blushing, Marietta can only stammer in confusion as he wonders aloud what he must do to make her accept his proposal. He presses on, asking directly if she believes marrying him would bring her suffering. Marietta quickly denies this, her expression turning serious as she insists that he, Di-sama, would be the one to face hardship, not her. She elaborates on her point, explaining that their marriage would undoubtedly subject him to intense criticism and attacks. While Didier calmly states that he does not mind such consequences, Marietta firmly retorts that she does. Her firm declaration gives him a moment of pause. He looks at her, a flicker of understanding in his eyes, as he murmurs that this must be her reason. But as he observes her distressed expression, he senses there is more to it. He questions her, asking if the potential backlash is truly the real reason for her refusal. His suspicion hardens into resolve. He concludes there must be an unavoidable reason for her refusal, one so significant it would force him to abandon his pursuit. He declares his desire to know the truth, unable to bear the uncertainty any longer and vowing not to be deterred by her vague explanations. Faced with his unwavering determination, Marietta's thoughts spiral. She fears that revealing the truth will mean they can never see each other again. Elsewhere, her familiars sense the gravity of the situation, with Grigio anxiously considering the possibility of having to leave the house. The weight of this fear paralyzes her. She begins to speak his name, but falters, realizing that continuing to hide the truth is becoming impossible. Her internal struggle reaches its peak. Acknowledging that he may not believe her, she decides she must reveal the truth for the sake of his future. Though terrified of his potential reaction, of his hatred, she takes a breath and begins to confess her secret. She raises a hand to her lips, taken aback, before telling him that's enough. Didier, his face etched with distress, insists his proposal was never meant to corner or terrify her. As he gently touches her cheek, he confesses that when it comes to her, he can never maintain his composure. He straightens up, his expression still troubled as he looks down at Marietta, who watches him rise, clutching a bouquet of flowers. He then takes a step back, and then another, deliberately putting distance between them as Marietta looks on in confusion. Turning his back completely, he offers a curt apology and walks away. Bewildered, Marietta calls out his name, questioning his sudden departure. Just as she processes his departure, he reappears holding a large sack. He explains that he brought more groceries and asks her to inform him if they are insufficient. Stunned, Marietta can only stammer her thanks. She flinches slightly as he stands near her again, his gaze intense and unreadable. A heavy silence hangs between them. He turns to leave once more, bidding her farewell until their next meeting. Left alone, Marietta clutches the flowers, lamenting that she couldn't say what she needed to. She sighs in conflicted relief, wondering if it's truly all right to keep delaying the inevitable. She buries her face in the flowers, her thoughts spiraling. He brought food in addition to the flowers. It must have been a burden. She feels she failed to meet his kindness with courage. As she wonders aloud if she was cruel to him, noting his forlorn expression, her cat familiar bluntly agrees that she was. Her moment of introspection is shattered by her other familiars. The cat exclaims over honey, while the squirrel excitedly points out the meat, bacon, and milk. Exasperated, Marietta tells the two of them to be quiet, complaining that she has too much on her mind. The two familiars immediately begin to squabble. The cat challenges the squirrel to a fight, calling it a dirty squirrel. The squirrel retorts angrily, questioning why the cat is trying to pick a fight and calling it a squirrel in return. The squirrel continues his tirade, accusing his sibling of stealing the nuts he had been saving. The other squirrel retorts that it was his own fault for leaving them out in the open. As they bicker, the witch Zelphira, flanked by her small plant familiar, holds up her hands and tries to calm everyone down, recalling that she did not see Sir Didier after their last encounter. Back inside the house, Marietta lets out a weary sigh, announcing her return. Her cat familiar, Grigio, watches as she reflects on how busy her days have been, tending to her vegetables, making crafts, and occasionally mediating fights between the forest animals. He pads over to a nearby chair and taps the seat, inviting her to sit. Confused, she asks what he means. He then questions her directly, asking if she has been pushing herself too hard lately. She is taken aback by the question, but as she tries to respond, a sudden wave of fatigue washes over her. She finds she cannot move, wondering aloud why she is so exhausted. Grigio points out that she has been running around since morning every single day without taking a break. Seeing her state, the small plant familiar, the melv tree, extends a leaf toward her. It encourages her to eat, telling her she needs to take a break sometimes and that this will make her feel better. Marietta accepts the offering with a quiet word of thanks. She nibbles on the leaf, finding it tasty. As she chews, Marietta muses on how strange it is to be so tired when she feels she hasn't been doing that much. Nearby, Grigio prepares to speak plainly, having noticed what she is not. He bluntly declares that she has contracted lovesickness. A blush spreads across Marietta's face as she sputters in disbelief. Grigio dismisses her denial, explaining that she is yearning to meet the knight but can't, so she's occupying herself all day long simply to distract herself. She insists that isn't true, though her expression is uncertain. Grigio presses on, suggesting that instead of waiting, she should try being the one to pay a visit to Sir Didier in town. The suggestion makes her recoil. She explains that the thought is too scary, imagining the townsfolk would speak ill of Sir Didier for maintaining a relationship with a witch. Her familiars listen as she voices her anxieties. She tries to brush it off, claiming it's fine and that she's satisfied with how her life is going. Grigio looks up at her, unimpressed, and retorts that if she's going to let that kind of thing bother her, then nothing will ever get done. He continued to press the issue, his gaze steady as he asked Marietta if she was truly fine with the possibility of never meeting the knight again. The question caught her off guard, a slight blush rising to her cheeks. Seeing her hesitation, he then proposed a solution. Could she not use her witchcraft to conjure a new outfit? He reasoned that if she wore regular clothes, she would appear as nothing more than an ordinary townswoman and wouldn't look like a witch. Taking his words to heart, Marietta focused her power. To her own surprise, she successfully conjured a simple, light-colored dress, marveling that she was able to create it. As she examined her creation, one of her small plant familiars piped up, asking about a carnival. Grigio explained that it's an annual festival for humans, a perfect opportunity for her to blend into the crowd. He encouraged her to go meet the knight, but Marietta remained hesitant, questioning if such a plan was truly acceptable. Ignoring her doubt, the small familiar excitedly urged her to hurry and get changed. The mention of the carnival sparked a realization in Marietta's mind. She understood now. The reason she hadn't heard from Didier was likely because he was occupied with preparations for the festival. This thought solidified her resolve. She declared her decision aloud. She would go to meet Didier. Even if they couldn't speak, she reasoned, just seeing him would be enough to soothe her heart. At her declaration, the little plant familiar let out a joyful cheer. Having changed out of the witch's robe and into a simple white dress, Marietta twirls slightly, asking if she looks strange. Her companions, the small plant familiar and the cat Grigio, are quick to reassure her, exclaiming that she looks pretty and wonderful. A new, happy life seems to be starting with this change of clothes. She admits that while the dress might not measure up to the one she used to wear, she has always liked this style and is glad the hem is not in the way. She wonders aloud if Sir D will like it too. At the same time, the small plant familiar, now wearing a tiny robe of its own, proudly announces its name, Melv Tree. The small familiar asks how it looks, earning praise from both Grigio and Marietta, who agree it's quite cute. Grigio's attention, however, quickly snaps back to Marietta. He calls her name, his tone turning serious, as he warns her to be especially careful in the city and not to follow strangers. Though surprised by his intensity, she confirms that she is aware of the danger. His warnings continue, urging her not to believe anyone even if they claim to be a friend of the night. Grigio's fretting earns him a pout from Marietta, who calls him a worrywart. Melv Tree interjects, telling Grigio to entrust Marietta to him. Trying to placate them, Marietta makes a list of promises. She won't trust strangers, get lost, or eat food from the floor. Still, Grigio remains unconvinced, voicing his fear that the sheltered princess could be too easily abducted. As she speaks, a soft glow envelopes her hand. She stares, wondering if it is a blessing. Grigio confirms that it is a rare fairy's blessing, but then notices her reaction as she flinches and pulls her hand back with a gasp. She asks why she would receive such a thing. Grigio gently pats her hand before his expression turns serious again. He announces there is more to discuss, thanking Agrija before posing a critical question. She knows she needs money to buy things, so does she have a wallet? Marietta looks utterly baffled. He explains his concern, recalling that the witch Zelphra subsisted on nothing but foraged fruits, nuts, and homemade hardtack. Thinking of this, he had searched the house for money but found none. Marietta quietly confirms that she does not have any. The familiar observes that her life has been more like something from a children's tale than a human one. She has been living off what she made herself, what the animals brought, and what the night provided. The realization dawns on Marietta, who smiles sadly. It's true. This whole time, she has been taken care of by everyone else. His lecture continues, as Grigio insists she stop, certain that her lack of business acumen would lead to her being swindled. A new idea sparks in Marietta's mind, however. She suggests that perhaps she could earn money by selling things like soaps and lotions. Her hopeful expression quickly fades into one of somber realization. She laments that she cannot ask Sir D for aid after rejecting him so thoroughly, and besides, he might never come by again. As Grigio questions her timidness, she recalls the knight's parting words, an open offer to purchase anything she might ever need. She listens as Grija instructs her to find Sir D as soon as possible and tell him to come to the forest, adding that a letter would also suffice. Marietta agrees, promising to try, as the small Melv Tree familiar expresses its approval. He then presents her with a small pouch, explaining that it is her allowance. Marietta looks at the unexpected gift with wide-eyed surprise, asking what it is. The cat familiar clarifies that he has been collecting money dropped by travelers in the forest, thinking it might be useful someday. Marietta is stunned by the revelation, shouting in disbelief that Grija had money all along. He encourages her not to hesitate in spending it, but stipulates that it is a short-term loan. She must repay him once she has gathered some money of her own. Delighted, Marietta clasps the pouch to her chest and gratefully accepts the terms. With her immediate financial problem solved, she cheerfully tells Melv Tree that it's time to go. The small familiar agrees enthusiastically. Below them lies the view of a bustling town, decorated with festive banners for a carnival. Upon arriving, she is immediately captivated by the vibrant energy of the carnival. She marvels at the sheer number of people, the bustling crowds, and the rows of vendors lining the streets. Her attention is drawn to the festival goers, all wearing costumes of witches, monsters, and rabbits. She remarks on how cute the masks are, then notices Melv Tree is wearing a small dark cloak. When she asks what it's supposed to be, the familiar proudly identifies itself, and Marietta realizes it's dressed as the great spirit of the forest. As they walk, a child waves goodbye, called away by their mother. Marietta waves back, feeling a wave of relief that their presence hasn't caused a commotion or drawn any unwanted attention. Her relief, however, quickly gives way to a sudden paranoia. She stops, a hand to her chin, as a new thought strikes her. Perhaps the reason no one is reacting is because they have already realized who she is. Her worried gaze then lands on a stall selling an assortment of masks. A solution presents itself. She can use one to hide her true identity. She approaches the vendor and confidently asks to purchase one. She places the cat-like mask over her face, feeling a sense of relief. With her identity now concealed, she believes she should be all right. Her small plant familiar, perched nearby, observes the new look. Turning to her companion, she asks for an opinion on her costume. The familiar declares it perfect. Though Marietta remains unsure if she'll be able to find Sir D, she agrees that since they've come this far, they should walk around and enjoy the festival. With her new disguise secured, she and the Melv Tree happily wander through the brightly lit festival grounds, passing by stalls laden with produce. They arrive in a crowded square where lanterns hang overhead. Marietta observes that everyone has started dancing, noting that it seems to be a dance for lovers. She tells her familiar that it's fun just to watch everything that's happening. As she watches, a man nearby is rejected after asking a woman to dance. Another man suggests they join in, but Marietta declines, preferring to watch from a distance. She and the Melv Tree agree to move a bit closer to observe. Her gaze inadvertently meets that of the man who was just rejected. He notices her looking, and to her shock, he points directly at her and shouts, "Hey you!" The man strides over, accusingly calling her a fine-looking one who has caught everyone's attention. He recognizes her as the girl from the town entrance who had no mask and suggests she did it on purpose to fish for a guy. Flustered, Marietta admits that it was her. Before she can explain, he grabs her arm, making her flinch. With a smug grin, he declares that he understands and insists they dance. She struggles, telling him to stop and denying his accusations. The man laughs, saying it's too late to be coy. The Melv tree furiously demands he let her go, but the man dismisses the tiny creature as a brat. Marietta calls out to her familiar as she's pulled away. Ignoring her protests, he yanks hard on the collar of her dress, causing her to choke. "What do you think you're doing?" she gasps, trapped in his grasp. Her struggle is cut short as the man accosting her is violently shoved away, stumbling back in confusion and shock, wondering what just happened. A tall, imposing figure in a formal military-style jacket now stands before her. Is Didier Valaklian? As Marietta peeks out from behind him, she asks about the commotion, but he dismisses it, his attention solely on her. He notices that a crowd is beginning to gather around them. Turning slightly, he asks Marietta and her small plant familiar, Melv Tree, if they are all right. The little familiar confirms that it is okay. With a gentle but firm motion, he takes her hand. "Come this way," he urges, leading her away from the growing number of onlookers. He guides her to a quieter, more secluded part of the festival grounds. Once they are away from the crowd, he stops and apologizes for dragging her away so suddenly. Her heart pounds as she shyly thanks him. Flustered, she asks how he knew it was her behind a mask. She then quickly checks on her plant familiar, who assures her that it is fine. She explains that she heard a strange voice telling her which way to go, a voice she was sure she'd heard before. Didier listens, then remarks that her description sounds very similar to the voice of Grija, the cat fairy who lives with her. The realization dawns on Marietta. It must have been Grija's blessing that guided her. Elsewhere, the cat familiar proudly accepts the unspoken thanks. Didier then confesses that he had been thinking of inviting her to the carnival festivities himself. However, he was worried that something might happen in such a large crowd, so he was surprised to see her there, feeling he had missed his chance. Marietta is stunned into silence. Blushing, she stammers out an apology for causing a disturbance. He immediately dismisses her apology, his expression turning serious. "I know that," he says gently. "It is not your fault, Marietta. That man was forcing himself onto you, correct?" He stands with Marietta, who turns away, her shoulders slumped. She expresses her intention to return home, stating that she has enjoyed the festival and is glad to have seen him. However, she feels she has become a burden, having caused a scene after coming to the city on her own, despite his kindness. As she begins to walk away, he reaches out and firmly grasps her arm, telling her to wait. Marietta flinches in surprise at the sudden contact. From a nearby tree, Grija and the Melv tree express their confusion, wondering why they are leaving so soon. She looks up at him, her expression a mix of confusion and surprise. He meets her gaze with a gentle smile, telling her that her coming to the city to see him makes him very happy. His gaze softens as he compliments her dress, noting how lovely it looks on her, and reaches out to gently touch the ribbon at her collar. A blush spreads across Marietta's face as she shyly admits she made the dress herself, her heart beginning to race. She internally contrasts this moment with the earlier assault, where the other man's touch filled her with disgust. Didier's is entirely different. He continues, confessing that being with her fills him with so much joy. His expression then turns serious as he reveals a startling fact. For the past month, he has been investigating her. The revelation stuns Marietta, her eyes widening in disbelief. He leans closer, his voice low and intense. He states it not as a question, but as a fact. She is not a citizen of this country. The weight of his words leaves her frozen, staring into the distance as his hand rests upon her shoulder. Her mind spirals into panic. She desperately hopes he hasn't realized the full truth of her identity, questioning what he could possibly know about her. Didier simply watches her silent turmoil, his own expression unreadable. The internal pressure shatters her composure. A dark, fragmented memory surfaces, a shadowy silhouette of her former self. Her identity fractures in her mind as she questions who she is, confusing the Princess of Sneeve with a darker persona. A single, horrifying thought screams through the chaos. She is someone who should be killed. She suddenly collapses, crying out as she clutches her head. A vicious voice echoes in her mind, calling her an utter abomination and blaming her for some unspoken fault. As she twitches in pain, Didier lunges forward in alarm, calling out her name while Grija and the Melv tree look on in horror. She collapses to the ground with a heavy slam. As her body hits the stone, a cruel memory screams through her mind, a declaration that twins are a herald of destruction and should be killed. Seeing her fall, Didier cries out her name in alarm. 18 years ago, in the snow country of Snoo, a pair of royal twins were born within the castle walls. This birth, however, was not a cause for celebration. In this country, twins are considered abominations, a dark omen that caused immediate concern. This superstition was rooted in Snoo's bloody past, where the birth of twin princes had repeatedly sparked civil wars, leading to immense destruction and casualties. As a result, a grim law was established. Should twins be born into the royal family, one must be killed. The court immediately erupted, with voices declaring the twins a herald of destruction that must be dealt with at once. As a decree to kill one of the newborn infants was given, a hand rose in protest. A voice declared the act unacceptable, pointing out a key difference. This time, the twins were princesses, not princes. The king furiously rejected the notion, insisting they could not accept twins. The dissenting noble, however, posed a strategic question. He reminded the court that Snoo would soon need to marry a bride into the Julvara royal family, and asked what would happen if something were to befall the princess before she came of age. He then laid out his plan. To avoid the stigma, they would publicly announce the birth of only one princess. The other, he proposed, could be kept in reserve, a spare in case of emergency. Thus, the fate of the princess of Snoo was decided. The firstborn, named Marietta, was designated the future bride to the throne of Julvara. She was raised in the public eye, showered with love, and given the greatest of care. The other, born later, was considered the unwanted child. That unwanted child was named Claudette. She was confined to a cold, barren room, left to shiver alone in the dark as the faint click of a lock sealed her isolation. Her food was slammed onto a table by a resentful governess who cursed her fate of having to care for a cursed brat. Nearby, two maids gossiped, expressing jealousy for Lady Marietta's attendants who lived in a warm castle. Overhearing them, Claudette could only lament her own miserable life, a stark contrast to the one her sister enjoyed. She flinches as a hand reaches toward her, letting out a startled cry. She immediately apologizes, but her governess is furious, berating her for her poor table manners and accusing her of deliberate provocation. As Marietta's spare, the girl had only received the bare minimum of education. The governess clicks her tongue in annoyance, ordering her to hurry up and eat so they can move on to her studies. Staring at her meager meal, the young princess questions the vast difference in their fates. They are both twins, yet Marietta is allowed a happy life. She cannot understand what is so wrong with her to deserve such a cruel existence. From her tower window, she observes the snowy town below, noting it has been unusually busy for the past few days. She wonders if a celebration is taking place. Her thoughts are interrupted by a crackling sound from the large pot in her room. The days have blurred together. The maid's visits have become increasingly infrequent, and it seems they have forgotten to feed her again. Racked with hunger, she remembers a piece of bread she had hidden away during a time when meals were more regular. Finding it, she smiles, thinking this small treasure will help her survive a little longer. Just as she reaches for her hidden sustenance, a sharp slap strikes her face. Her governess stands over her, demanding to know what she is doing. The girl looks up, her eyes wide with shock and fear. The woman's voice is filled with venom. She accuses the child of being a thorn in her side on purpose and demands to know who gave her permission to eat whenever she pleased. Her tirade halts as she notices an unusual warmth spreading through the room. Confused, she wonders why it is suddenly so hot. A distinct crackling sound draws her attention to the large pot. The governess approaches the pot, her face a mask of cold fury. She calls the girl an insolent, damned abomination, declaring her life utterly worthless. With a sharp clink, she lifts the pot and pours its glowing, burning contents onto the floor before the terrified princess. Seeing the flames, the governess shrieks, falsely accusing Claudette of starting the fire herself. "The fire shall cleanse you," she screams. The burning material splashes onto the young girl, who collapses to the ground, her cries of agony echoing through the stone room as the fire consumes her. She lay crumpled on the floor, the governess looming over her as two maids gossiped nearby. One remarked that Princess Marietta was being sent to Julvara, prompting the other to question the need for a spare any longer. The governess, annoyed by how much time the girl had wasted, considered taking a little revenge. Her mind reeled with their cruel words. They had called her an accursed child who would be disposed of soon enough. Terror gripped her as she clutched her injured face. The maids continued their hushed plotting, one suggesting they might get a reward if they dealt with her ahead of schedule. The word disposed echoed in the young princess's thoughts, the horrifying meaning crashing down on her. She was going to be killed. A primal scream of terror tore from her throat. "I don't want to die," she shrieked, the raw desperation in her voice startling the maids and the governess. She pleaded for it to stop, overwhelmed by fear. In that instant, a massive explosion erupted from the top of the south tower, shattering the stone. On the street below, citizens cried out in alarm, pointing towards the blast and shouting that people were trapped inside. Moments later, Claudette found herself standing in a snowy alley, dazed and confused. She felt cold and hurt, wondering what had just happened, and if she was the one who had caused the ruckus she could hear nearby. She looked around, her eyes wide with a mixture of fear and wonder as a newsboy's cry of "Extra! Extra!" cut through the air. For the first time, she was seeing the outside world. As she stood there, a newspaper, carried by the wind, fluttered down and landed in a puddle at her feet. The headline was a celebration. The departure of Her Highness, Princess Marietta, for Jilvara. Her hand trembled as she reached down and picked up the damp paper. Staring back at her from a front page was a smiling portrait of her twin sister. Marietta, she whispered, the name a ghost on her lips. Tears streamed down her soot-stained cheeks as she stared at the image of her happy, celebrated sister. A single, agonizing question consumed her. Why? Why do only you? Her body slams against the cold, snowy ground. Tears well in her eyes as the bitter question echoes in her mind. How could her sister look so happy? As she lies there, broken, the sound of a single step cuts through the silence. That step belongs to a figure who now looms over her. A woman in a dark, hooded cloak stands silently, her face shadowed, looking down at the fallen princess. Through the large window behind her, a decorated tree stands amidst the gently falling snow, a stark contrast to the tense confrontation unfolding. A young girl, Claudette, awakens with a start, a painful memory echoing in her mind. The cruel words, "You have no reason to exist, you detestable creature," still ring in her ears. She sits up in bed, clutching her head as a sharp pain accompanies her return to consciousness. A voice asks if she is awake. She looks up to see a woman in a dark, hooded robe by her bedside. The woman explains that Claudette had been unconscious for 2 days, and she was beginning to worry she might not wake up at all. She found Claudette collapsed in an alleyway and brought her here. The woman muses that she had just set out on a journey, only to end up picking up a child. Beside her, a black cat watches silently. Claudette, still bewildered, asks herself who this child is and why she was so battered and bruised. She looks down at her own hands, confused. The robed woman observes her quietly. The woman points out that even while unconscious, Claudette had been clutching a piece of paper tightly. She asks if it is something important. Claudette looks down at the crumpled paper in her hand, her expression a mixture of confusion and fear. A tense silence hangs between them. The robed woman waits for an answer, but Claudette remains quiet, unable or unwilling to speak. The woman's expression softens into a knowing smile. She remarks that she was surprised to find Claudette having been drawn by a powerful wave of magic. She then makes an offer. If Claudette has nowhere else to go, she could come live with her. The witch explains that with proper training, Claudette could become as powerful as the current saint, revealing that the girl possesses immense latent talent. Claudette is stunned by the revelation that she has talent. The witch gently takes the crumpled paper from Claudette's hand, promising to teach her how to use her magic. As she takes her hand, the witch asks for her name. The girl looks up, her eyes wide, and softly replies, Claudette. From that day forward, the witch who had taken her in became her mentor. She was surprisingly kind, patiently teaching Claudette everything from the properties of medicinal herbs to the very fundamentals of magic. Claudette reflects on her new life. Her own magic grew stronger day by day, and the number of things she could do steadily increased. The daily life with the witch was a balm, pushing away the memories of her time in captivity and allowing her to forget her painful past. She looks at her hands, now sparkling with magic, and wishes that these happy days could last forever. She walked through the town, basket in hand, mentally checking off her shopping list. She wondered if she had seen yesterday's newspaper, a fleeting thought from a life that felt increasingly distant. At that moment, she truly believed her new life was a simple, happy one. Her mind drifted to the news she'd overheard regarding a ceremony for the new king. The chosen queen consort was to be a princess from the snow country of Snoo, whose name was Marie. She commented to her companion that it seemed like an unpleasant way for the kingdom to flaunt its military power by spreading such information so widely. The witch casually identified the princess as Marietta von Schnobel, remarking that someone like her was surely promised happiness from birth and was quite beautiful in her portrait. The name struck a nerve. Claudette covered her face, her voice strained as she insisted that it no longer mattered. She had a new life now. The past was irrelevant. The constant, unpleasant talk in town became too much to bear. She cut her trip short, returning to the forest much earlier than usual. As she stepped onto the familiar teleportation circle, the witch's voice echoed through the trees, acknowledging her early return. She looked up with a bright smile, confirming her return. Seeing the witch sitting on a large rock, she expressed her sincere gratitude, saying how truly lucky she felt to have been brought there. From her perch, the witch murmured just loud enough to be heard, "What a fine sacrifice I've found." The words hung in the air. Claudette's smile faltered, replaced by confusion. "Oh, who are you talking to?" she asked, a hint of unease in her voice. The witch let out a sharp laugh. "A sacrifice?" she repeated mockingly. She questioned if Claudette truly believed she was being cared for out of simple affection, calling it a silly joke. "You understand me, don't you?" she purred. "This is just a game." Her tone turned cold and calculating. She explained that once the girl's magical power had matured, she would become the perfect sacrifice to summon a legendary evil dragon. With such a beast at her command, no one would ever dare to oppose her again. As a crow on her shoulder cawed, the witch's silhouette twisted into a monstrous, draconic shape. She continued, her voice dripping with contempt. Manipulating the girl was simple. She was becoming more dependent by the day. The witch dismissed her as a mere stray whose disappearance would go unnoticed. A cruel smile touched her lips as she savored the thought of the girl's expression upon learning her true purpose. "I can't wait," she whispered. But she was not speaking to the crow alone. Hidden just out of sight, huddled against the wall of the house, Claudette had heard every word. Her body trembled as silent sobs racked her small frame. Her mind reels with a single, agonizing question. Why is it always her? She wonders what she could have possibly done to deserve this fate. A cruel voice from her past echoes in her memory, declaring that twins are a symbol of destruction, that she, a cursed child, has no right to live. She was born simply because she was a princess. This thought is immediately followed by the image of her sister, who she believes was promised happiness from the moment of her birth. The injustice of it all becomes too much to bear. She presses her hands to her face as tears of despair stream down her cheeks. Her anguish manifests as raw power. Suddenly, the witch finds herself bound by glowing magical chains, screaming in shock. Why? Claudette, her expression now one of pure fury, demands to know what the witch did to her magic. Zelpher explains that she only rewrote the spell slightly, changing the ritual from summoning a vile dragon to a holy beast, with herself as the sacrifice. Zelpher looks upon the enraged girl, initially dismissing the situation as impossible. But as she considers Claudette's words, a realization begins to dawn. Perhaps, she muses, the girl truly does have talent. A cold, knowing smile spreads across Claudette's face. Seeing this, the witch's eyes widen in a moment of sudden clarity. "I was wrong," Zelpher declares, a strange sense of gratitude in her voice. "Forgive me, and thank you for everything." With that, she shatters the magical bonds holding her. As the witch's body slumps to the ground, the great holy beast summoned by the ritual begins to dissolve into motes of light. Claudette stands over the scene, her expression unmoved, and coldly bids it farewell, telling it to stop. The majestic creature's form completely disintegrates, its magical essence scattering into the air until nothing remains. In the aftermath, Claudette's singular, driving obsession becomes clear. All that kept her going was the burning resentment for her sister, Marietta. She vows that she will never forgive her, nor allow her to be the only one to find happiness. However, this was all part of the witch's true, 2-year-long scheme. Among her vast collection of spells was one for swapping souls, which required a powerful price. To prepare, she captured a cat familiar to guard her home and cast a spell to make it rain for a year, ensuring the local knights would not interfere. The plan succeeded. The witch, now in Claudette's young body, sighs that she can no longer walk around town in this form. She turns to the figure now trapped in her old, reviled body, the real Claudette. The witch explains that since everyone despises this body, Claudette will now be able to experience her pain on a much deeper level. She gently caressed the face of the identical girl before her mind fixated on the name, Marietta. The time was finally approaching. Tomorrow morning, Marietta would perform the ritual to summon the holy beast. To ensure her plans proceeded without interruption, she sought out the house cat familiar, Grigio, now cloaked in her familiar dark robes. She issued a series of commands. He was forbidden from entering the basement without her express permission. He was to guard the house well, and under no circumstances was he to allow any knights to approach. The familiar bristled with indignation. He questioned who she thought she was to give him orders, declaring he had no interest in the basement to begin with. Unmoved, she stared him down, her voice flat and cold as she reiterated that it was a command, not a request. Turning her back on the defiant creature, she walked away, a single thought of disdain for the unpleasant girl she was about to confront passing through her mind. She proceeded down to the forbidden basement. There, she took her place in the center of a complex magical sigil glowing on the floor, surrounded by flickering candles. At last, she thought, it would all be over. With the success of this spell, she would shed the identity of Claudette, the hated, cursed child, forever. Gazing into a dark, scrying surface, she saw the reflection of her new face and spoke as if to an old enemy. She could finally say goodbye to this hateful body and its detestable scars. It was simply unfair, she mused, for her sister to be the only one to achieve happiness. A memory of Marietta's pleading face surfaced, a desperate reminder that they were twins. The memory did nothing to soften her resolve. A vicious, triumphant smile spread across her face as her eyes gleamed. Clutching the fabric at her neck, she sealed her intent with a final, chilling pronouncement directed at her twin. "You will be unhappy too, Marietta." Marietta's eyes flutter open. Her body feels leaden as she slowly takes in her surroundings, recognizing the opulent bedroom as part of Surtees' estate. A wave of confusion washes over her as she wonders what could have possibly happened. Her gaze then falls upon a newspaper from the Zilvara kingdom resting nearby. The sight startles her, and she questions why it is here, in this place. The newspaper triggers a chaotic flood of memories, fragmented images of her twin sister, Claudette, and flashes of her own recent despair and turmoil. As if summoned by her distress, a magical circle glows brightly on the floor, and from it emerge her 3 loyal familiars. Seeing them materialize before her, Marietta pushes herself up, her voice filled with relief as she calls out, "Grigio, Melv Tree." The small companions rush to her bedside, their voices a chorus of concern and joy as they cry out her name. Surrounded by her familiars, Marietta sits up fully and asks what happened. They explain that she suddenly collapsed and has been in a deep, unresponsive sleep for 10 days, which caused them all great worry. She reels at the news, 10 days unconscious. The familiars add that Sir D had also been crying over her. The mention of his name brings a vision of her sister Claudette to the forefront of her mind as she wonders about Sir D. She turns away, her back to her concerned friends. Clutching the fabric of her nightgown, she whispers that she is not worthy of the kindness they are all showing her. Meanwhile, just outside the closed door, a man's voice, filled with concern, asks, "Marietta, have you woken up yet?" Another voice quietly responds that she has not. He stood in his library, listening to the magic doctor's report. She explained that there were no magical abnormalities with Marietta. Her condition was likely psychological. This confirmation did little to ease his mind, as he wondered if her collapse was something more than a simple fainting spell. Seated at his desk, he demanded a second opinion, ordering his aide to summon another magic doctor. The aide informed him that there were only 2 such doctors in the entire country, and one of them was... He cut the aide off, his expression strained. He knew the other was his father's personal physician. Dismissing the idea as unnecessary since his father was in perfect health, he impatiently urged his aide to hurry. A frantic pounding echoed his own racing heart. His urgent thoughts were shattered when the door to his study creaked open. He looked up to see Marietta standing there, causing him to gasp her name in disbelief. Meanwhile, in her room, Marietta thanked her familiars. She expressed her gratitude to Grigio for rushing to her side, who in turn mentioned his own worry when she didn't return home. The small plant familiar, Melv Tree, simply advised her not to push herself, to which Marietta replied that she was all right now. As she spoke, she recalled hearing that someone had been worried she'd collapsed from eating something strange, a thought she dismissed as ridiculous. Her recollection was violently interrupted as the door to her room was thrown open with a loud bang. The sound was followed by the sight of Sir D in the doorway, his face a mask of shock as he cried out her name. Marietta, startled, looked up from her bed and murmured his name in surprise before rising to her feet. He rushed forward, closing the distance between them and pulling her into a tight embrace. He confessed how glad he was to see her awake, admitting he had feared she might never open her eyes again. Overwhelmed, Marietta could only repeat his name as tears welled in her eyes. Still held in his arms, she looked up at him, flustered. Recalling what she had overheard about him crying, she apologized for causing him so much trouble. Her familiars watched the emotional scene unfold, their expressions wide with surprise. Observing the scene from the foot of the bed, Grigio the cat remarked on the impressive size of the mansion. Turning to his small companion, he enthusiastically suggested they go explore. Sir D holds Marietta's face, his expression etched with concern. He questions if she is truly all right, suggesting another visit to a doctor. Marietta, however, insists she is fine. Beside them, the small plant familiar, Melv Tree, offers up a recovery leaf, urging her to eat it. Her gaze drops as she addresses him with sudden gravity, explaining that there is something she must confess to him. His expression tightens, a flicker of fear in his eyes. A chilling thought crosses his mind. If he listens, he might lose her. The possibility is terrifying. Despite his internal fear, Marietta stands resolute before him. She declares that she cannot remain as she is. This is a problem she must confront head-on and absolutely must discuss with him. With a hand pressed to her chest, she makes a startling confession. She is not a citizen of this country. He looks down at her, his composure returning as he processes her words. He asks if she is from that country, revealing that he had seen her picture in a newspaper. She confirms his suspicion, her voice low. She is indeed Princess Marietta from the Snoo Kingdom. She had realized, she explains, that sharing the exact same name as the princess in the paper was likely no coincidence. He asks when she had come to this realization. He admits that he had his own suspicions from very early on. Her refined gestures and speech were not what one would expect from a reclusive forest witch. He had concluded she was a well-bred young woman, hiding in the woods for some unknown reason. He continues, stating that he never could have imagined she was the queen of Zilvara. His gaze shifts to the document on the table. There was a point of confusion he couldn't resolve. Reports indicated that Queen Marietta was still in Zilvara. The issue was far more complex than just a shared name. She stares at the newspaper, her eyes wide with shock at the uncanny resemblance between herself and the woman in the photograph. As she grapples with this, Sir D reiterates his earlier sentiment, his voice firm. As he said before, he does not want to lose Marietta. He gently takes her hands in his, assuring her that it makes no difference to him who she is or where she came from. Looking up at her tear-streaked face, he makes a heartfelt plea, asking Marietta to be his wife. He urges her to come to him without any worries, but she looks away, believing she is not worthy of such an offer. He immediately dismisses her concerns, declaring that he will abolish any such qualifications himself. Overwhelmed, Marietta breaks down, the image of the witch she has become flashing in her mind. She protests that he can't do this, that he too will become unhappy. Unwavering, he vows to protect her for the rest of his life. Her anguish deepens as she confesses the source of her despair. She cries out that she has no right to happiness, not after stealing a life from her sister, Claudette. Sir D, taken aback, repeats the name, confirming she is Marietta's twin sister. She explains that in her homeland, twins are considered a taboo and a symbol of misfortune. Her younger sister, born moments after her, was hidden away as a spare, an abhorred child. As he listens, Sir D processes this revelation. He remarks that none of his intelligence on Queen Marietta of Snoo ever mentioned a twin, finding it unbelievable that people still cling to such superstitions. Marietta continues her story, recalling a happy childhood where she was raised blissfully unaware of her sister's existence. She remembers her parents as kind and loving, which makes it impossible for her to believe they could do something so cruel to Claudette. A dark realization settles over her as the shadowy form of the witch looms in her mind. She speculates that the evil deeds committed in this land must be a form of revenge directed at her, and concludes that the truly evil one is not the witch persona she fears. Sir D's voice cuts through her despair, declaring that if anyone is to be judged, it is those who persecuted the sisters. Looking up with gratitude, Marietta thanks him, but her guilt remains. She confesses that she, the one born without magic, should have been cast aside, but Claudette took on that entire burden for her. Overwhelmed by her confession, she continues to weep. She explains that her heart aches with pain and sorrow whenever she thinks about what Claudette must have endured. The princess confesses that she feels ashamed of her very existence and wishes she could simply disappear. As she sobs, Sir D gently places a hand on her head, calling her name in a comforting tone. He then has a sudden realization. Gently holding her face in his hands to make her look at him, he declares that he has a solution. He proposes that they go together to meet her sister. Stunned by his words, Marietta can only look up at him in tearful disbelief. While the Hoth Kingdom is larger, the Zilvara Kingdom is a great nation in its own right, protected by a dragon said to be worth 1,000,000 soldiers, keeping the two powers in a cold war. With tears welling in her eyes, Marietta asks Didier if he is suggesting they go to Zilvara to see Claudette. He confirms that he is. He gently takes her hands, asking if she is truly prepared to go to the Zilvara Kingdom. He reveals that he and his grandfather have long been working to build a friendly relationship with Zilvara, but without success. However, he continues, with Marietta's involvement and a direct message from him, a royal. They could not be ignored. The revelation leaves Marietta speechless. Stunned, she questions him, Lord Dick Royal? He casually asks if he hadn't mentioned it, explaining that he distanced himself from his family after his brother was suspected of plotting for the throne. Marietta's mind reels, initially thinking he's calling her by his own name before the truth sinks in. She is utterly shocked. Her face flushes as she realizes Didier is a prince. A flood of memories rushes back, mistaking him for a squirrel, touching him without permission, speaking to him so informally, even sleeping in his bed. The weight of her perceived disrespect is overwhelming. All the while, he watches her panic with a faint, amused smile. He chuckles softly, remarking that her flustered reaction proves he was right not to tell her sooner. Still embarrassed, Marietta retorts that his reasoning is flawed. His expression softens into a warm smile. He tells her he is simply glad to finally see her looking energetic again, and that he prefers her just the way she is. Touched by his words, Marietta looks up at him, murmuring his name. A flicker of doubt remains, however, as a new concern comes to mind. She voices this concern. If it were discovered that the Queen of Zilvara had been replaced, wouldn't it become an international incident, possibly even leading to war? As she speaks, an image of the witch in her royal guise flashes through her mind. Didier, calmly looking at a book, assures her that this will not happen. Her confusion is evident. He then explains the simple reason. The king of Zilvara is utterly besotted with Queen Marietta. As Marietta tries to comprehend this, Didier elaborates. He shows her a souvenir plate, explaining that the city streets are filled with memorabilia depicting the affectionate royal couple. The king of Zilvara treasures the current queen so much, he explains, that he would never risk a war. The realization begins to dawn on Marietta. She reflects on an image of her sister, Claudette, held by the normally cold Prince Yule. Marietta muses on how happy Claudette seems, and how surprising it is to see such an expression on the prince's face. As she processes this, Didier gently tells her not to worry. He reassures her that her sister is loved by her husband, the king, and he believes she is living a happy life. He continues, expressing his belief that her sister would no longer blame her for anything. He looks at her earnestly, insisting that she also deserves to find happiness. Her eyes widen with a glimmer of hope as she asks if he truly believes that. Didier confirms without hesitation. He then makes a heartfelt declaration, stating that if Marietta were to become his wife, he would be the happiest of all. He punctuates his words by gently kissing the back of her hand. Overwhelmed, tears stream down Marietta's face. She asks if he is truly certain, questioning if he would regret choosing someone like her. In response, Didier firmly states that he will repeat it as many times as necessary. It is Marietta he wants. He softens his tone, telling her that she doesn't need to give him an answer right away. He vows that he will absolutely not give up, promising to wait until her heart is ready. As he says this, His own words seem to catch him by surprise, and his expression shifts to one of slight bewilderment at his own forwardness. Seeing his unwavering sincerity, Marietta's tears of doubt transform into tears of joy. With a radiant smile, she makes her decision and declares that she will marry him. She clasps her hands together, her gaze full of emotion as she repeats his name. Her sudden acceptance leaves Didier completely stunned and momentarily speechless. He remains frozen, still processing her sudden acceptance. Marietta, trembling slightly, holds his hand and clarifies her feelings, murmuring that if it is with him, she is ready. Her voice then rings out with newfound confidence. Looking directly at him with flushed cheeks, she declares loudly that she wants to be his wife. The sudden, enthusiastic confirmation leaves Didier momentarily speechless, while her small plant familiar expresses its own shock. Overcome with emotion, he pulls her into a tight embrace, burying his face in her hair. He whispers her name, followed by a heartfelt, "Thank you, Marietta." He pulls back just enough to look at her, his expression one of pure bliss as he declares that this is the happiest day of his life. With tears of joy welling in her eyes, Marietta whispers that she feels the exact same way. As they sit together, still holding each other close, Didier confesses with a gentle smile that he had been thinking they might get married in about 10 years. Nestled against him, Marietta looks up in complete surprise, questioning if he truly intended to wait for such a long time. He gazes down at her, his expression tender and serious. He explains his reasoning simply. For him, she is the one and only woman he loves. Her expression softens into pure adoration, her eyes reflecting his own affection as they lean closer together, their noses almost touching. He places a gentle, reverent kiss upon her forehead. Marietta closes her eyes, a serene smile gracing her lips. From the doorway, her two familiars, the plant Sprout and the cat Grigio, watch the tender moment unfold with happy hearts. Sometime later, Marietta recounts the events that followed. She explains that Didier arranged a meeting for her with his grandfather and legal guardian, a man named Lord Reed, whom she recalls as a calm and gentle person. During their meeting, Lord Reed addresses them both with a warm smile. He admits he had wondered if he would oppose their union, but instead encourages them to cherish their relationship. Marietta finishes her recollection, noting how wonderfully supportive Lord Reed was of their engagement. She stands beside Didier as Lord Reed expresses his relief, stating that he knew everything would be fine and that he's happy Didier has finally found a suitable partner. Lord Reed then reveals he has already proposed a friendship treaty with the Zilvara Kingdom to the king on their behalf. Sometime later, she arrives at a familiar house nestled in the woods, announcing her return after a long time away. With her familiars Grigio and the Melv tree in tow, she joyfully throws her arms open, declaring their arrival at the forest house. She remarks that it has been a while, and that over time, this place has begun to feel like her true home. The thought overwhelms her, and tears begin to stream down her face. Beside her, Grigio looks up in concern, asking what is wrong. She explains through her tears, confessing her worry that the garden would be in a terrible, dilapidated state after being neglected for so long. Her familiars listen, surprised by her concern. Her gaze then falls upon the garden, which is surprisingly pristine. As she wonders about it, the two squirrel siblings appear, holding gardening tools and cheerfully welcoming her home. Stunned, she asks if they were the ones who tended to the garden in her absence. The larger squirrel puffs out its chest, proudly asking if it isn't beautiful. He then clarifies that it wasn't just them. The other animals and fairies of the forest all took turns helping out to ensure the garden would be perfect for her return, because they didn't want her to be sad. Marietta listens, taken aback by the revelation. She is overcome with emotion once more, realizing they all worked so hard for her sake. Tears of gratitude well in her eyes as she thinks of everyone's efforts. Surrounded by her loyal familiars and the helpful squirrels, she smiles through her tears, thanking them all and declaring how much she loves them. She sat at her desk as Sir Didier Valaclian delivered his report. He explained that he had returned with a reply from the Zilvara Kingdom. The king, he noted, was very receptive to fostering friendship between their nations and had sent back a formal reply with an envoy. However, there was something else included within the official correspondence. He presented a separate, sealed letter, explaining that it had been delivered under conditions of confidentiality. Though its sender was unknown, he was certain it was meant for her. Marietta looked on with wide-eyed surprise as Didier revealed the letter's contents, a request for the recipient to come to the Zilvara Kingdom. The purpose of the summons was explicit. The sender wished to hold a secret meeting to discuss the matter of Queen Marietta. As she absorbed the weight of this clandestine invitation, her expression settled into one of quiet resolve.